Story 1. Skip mom's birthday. Dad texted coldly. No one wants you here anyway. You're a total failure. I just smirked and wrote back. So cash matters more than your kid? I just canceled everything. Even the restaurant deposit you can't get back. They're all laughing in their group chat, but they have absolutely no clue what's about to hit them. I never thought I'd be posting something like this on Reddit, but honestly, I need to get this off my chest. And this seems like the right place. Fair warning. This is going to be long, so buckle up. Names changed for obvious reasons. So I, 38 male, married to Marissa, 37 female, been together since sophomore year of college when we met in a psych class. And we've got two awesome kids, Jake, 9 male, and Ellie, 5 female. We live in a modest 3-bedroom ranch just outside Indianapolis that needs work, but has good bones. I run my own construction and renovation business, specializing in high-end bathroom and kitchen remodels. Nothing glamorous, but I pull in about $85,000 a year, which isn't bad for a guy who started with just a beat-up F-150 and a secondhand tool collection. A bit about my background. I grew up in what looks like the perfect suburban family from the outside, but was toxic as hell underneath. My dad's a real estate developer who made his fortune flipping commercial properties in the 90s and never lets anyone forget it. My older sister Lisa's a corporate attorney married to a plastic surgeon who specializes in mommy makeovers for wealthy clients. My younger sister Jenna's in pharmaceutical sales, driving a company BMW and living in a downtown condo my parents helped her buy. Growing up, our house was like a museum. Expensive furniture you couldn't actually sit on, a formal dining room used twice a year, and my mom constantly redecorating to keep up with whatever her country club friends were doing. I was always the black sheep because I chose to work with my hands instead of chasing some fancy degree or corporate ladder. Don't get me wrong, I went to college, got a business degree, but discovered I loved building things during a summer construction job. My parents never forgave me for choosing a blue-collar path. At family gatherings, they'd introduce my sisters with their full job titles and accomplishments, then just gesture vaguely at me and say, "That's Bruce. He's in construction." Like it was a temporary phase I was going through at 38. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday morning back in February. Normal day. Had just dropped the kids at school. Jake forgot his science project, so we had to go back for it, making us late. And I stopped at this local coffee shop I like before heading to a kitchen remodel job for a doctor's family. I was standing in line, scrolling through my phone checking supply orders, when it buzzed with a notification. Family group chat titled Mom's Birthday was flashing on my screen. For context, my mom's birthday is a huge deal in our family. She expects a full weekend celebration, expensive gifts, the works. Last year, my sister Lisa took her to a spa retreat in Arizona that cost more than my first car. I usually try to do something thoughtful since I can't compete financially. Last year, I restored this antique jewelry box she'd mentioned wanting fixed. She thanked me, then it disappeared into a closet somewhere. Anyway, I opened the chat expecting the usual chaos about cake flavors or outfit coordination. Yes, they do that. But instead, I see this message from my dad. Don't come to mom's birthday party. The whole family doesn't want you there. You're a loser. I just stared at it. No emojis, no cushioning, just this bomb dropped in the middle of our family chat. The barista had to call my name twice because I was so shocked. And you know what? After the initial gut punch, I actually smiled. Not because it was funny, but because finally the mask came off. For years, they'd been looking down their noses at me. The tension at family dinners where they'd talk about their BMWs and vacation homes while giving me pitying looks. The eye rolls when I tried to explain the complexity of matching 100-year-old woodwork in a historic renovation, like I was some kind of plumber instead of a skilled craftsman. The Christmas where my dad handed out bonus checks to my sisters for their hard work, but gave me a Home Depot gift card for $100. And worst of all, the way they treated Marissa, who's an elementary school teacher, like she was the help, always asking her to watch the other kids during family functions or help in the kitchen while my sisters lounged around. But this message? This was pure, unfiltered truth. I scrolled up, nothing leading to it. Just some messages about party decorations, then boom, you're a loser. I wrote back only, so you chose money over your son? Then I canceled the restaurant reservation I'd made 3 weeks earlier. This fancy Italian place where meals start at $90 a plate. My mom always talked about it, but claimed it was too exclusive to get reservations. What she didn't know is I'd done a custom wine cellar for the owner last year, working weekends for 2 months to get it perfect. He was so happy with it that he promised me the private room whenever I wanted. I'd booked it for $2,500, arranged for a special menu featuring all my mom's favorites, and even hired a jazz trio to play her favorite songs. Nobody knew about it. I wanted to surprise them, show them I was still family, even though I didn't drive a European car or vacation in the Hamptons. Then came the flood. My cousin Brant, investment banker, total douchebag, who once asked if I needed a loan in front of everyone at Thanksgiving, replied with laughing emojis. My sister Lisa wrote, "You really are delusional, still living in your little construction fantasy while the rest of us built real careers. Maybe if you'd applied yourself in school like Dad wanted instead of playing with hammers, you wouldn't be embarrassing us all." Jenna, who I thought might have my back since I've helped her move 3 times and fixed up her condo for free, just liked the message and stayed quiet. Then my uncle sent a meme with my face photoshopped onto a clown, with the caption, "When you think manual labor makes you successful." They were all responding within seconds of each other, like they'd been waiting for this moment. The group chat exploded with everyone piling on. Aunt Carol asking if I could at least dress properly if I did show up. My other cousin suggesting I could park cars or something useful at the party, and my mom's sister saying maybe it was for the best since Marissa clearly doesn't own anything appropriate for the venue anyway. That's when I knew I was done. Really fucking done. After that group chat, I didn't say another word to any of them. Not on the chat, not to my dad, nobody. I didn't block them or delete the thread though. I wanted them to see me online, active, living my life. I wanted them to wonder. I finished my coffee, went to my job site, and worked like nothing happened. The client's wife brought me lunch. She did that sometimes because I was rebuilding her dream kitchen and actually listened to what she wanted, instead of telling her what she should want like their last contractor. Normal day. I came home, played catch with Jake, helped Ellie with her reading, ate dinner with my family. When the kids were in bed, I told Marissa everything. Not just about the message, but all the years leading up to it. How they'd make snide comments about her teacher's salary while asking her to watch their kids for free. How my mom would accidentally exclude us from family photos because we weren't dressed upscale enough or position us at the back. How at my nephew's birthday, my sister asked Marissa if she could help the catering staff set up, not realizing she was basically asking my wife to be unpaid labor. I told her about the time my dad gave my oldest sister a $25,000 gift for a down payment on her house, but told me asking for a $5,000 loan for business equipment was enabling my poor choices. About how my mom had a habit of introducing Marissa as Bruce's wife, she's a teacher, in this tone that made it sound like she was saying, she has head lice. Marissa listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she didn't say, I told you so, even though she could have. She'd been telling me for years that my family treated us like second-class citizens. She just nodded and asked, what do you want to do? That moment right there? That's when I realized what I had. Most of my family would never have someone who had their back no matter what. They were all too busy climbing over each other to get to the top, throwing each other under the bus to impress my dad. My older sister literally scheduled her wedding during my younger sister's college graduation to steal the spotlight. They were that kind of family. I told Marissa I didn't just want revenge. I wanted to show them that money isn't everything, that they'd thrown away the only person who ever genuinely cared about them rather than what they could provide. So what's the plan? She asked. And that's when it started to take shape. First, I contacted my buddy Mason, who runs a digital marketing agency. We played football together in high school, and I'd renovated his basement into a killer home office the previous year at cost because he was between jobs. I asked him to help me build a proper website for my renovation business. Not just a landing page with my phone number, but a full portfolio showing the high-end work I'd been quietly doing for years. See, what my family never bothered to find out was that I'd developed a reputation among architects for detail work that nobody else could match. Those hammer and nail skills they mocked, they'd led to me getting referrals for some of the most expensive homes in the area. I just never bragged about it like they would have. Mason built me a website showcasing before-after photos of my best projects, testimonials from clients, including several whose names even my status-obsessed family would recognize, and a proper booking system. He also set up targeted social media that would reach the exact high-end clients I wanted. Within 2 weeks, I had customers with 7-figure homes messaging me from Instagram. My business tripled from $85,000 to on track for nearly $250,000 that year. Then I called my cousin Ryan, not one from the group chat. He'd left the family years ago after his dad, my uncle, borrowed $150,000 from Ryan's college fund to invest in a sure-thing casino development that went bust. We'd kept in touch on the down low, grabbing lunch when he was in town. He lives out in Asheville, North Carolina, owns a bunch of rental properties, and had always said there was room for me if I ever wanted to move. He'd even offered me a deal on one of his houses a while back, I never took him up on it, until now. I told him I was thinking of moving. Fresh start. He didn't hesitate. Said one of his tenants was leaving in 3 months, and the place was mine if I wanted it. 4 bedrooms on the edge of the mountains, mortgage would be less than our current place, space for the kids, a workshop for my tools, and most importantly, peace. Meanwhile, I was playing nice on social media, posting pictures of me and Marissa at charity events in the wealthy parts of town where I had clients, coaching Jake's Little League team, where he was actually getting pretty good, Ellie's dance recital. She got a solo even though she was youngest in her class, family dinners, always smiling, always together, never once mentioning the drama behind the scenes. I also started posting before, after shots of my latest projects, all multi-million-dollar homes with owners who trusted me with their luxury kitchens and bathrooms, a famous former NFL player's media room, a tech CEO's custom library with hidden passages and built-in gadgets, a complete restoration of a historic mansion's original woodwork that had been featured in a design magazine. And my family was watching. I know they were. Because one day, Lisa sent me a private message. Where did you get the money to attend the Children's Hospital Gala? Those tickets are $500 each. Dad thinks you might be in some kind of financial trouble and making bad decisions. Translation. They can't stand that I might actually be doing well without their help. I left it on read. Then Mom texted, not in the group chat, but directly. Bruce, I see your business is doing well. Maybe we should talk? Your father has some connections that might help you expand. Some of our friends have been asking about your work, which is a bit awkward since we don't know what to tell them. Translation. Now that other rich people are noticing me, they want to pretend they've been supportive all along. It was tempting to tell them to go fuck themselves, but I waited. I needed more time. This wasn't about giving them a piece of my mind. It was about showing them exactly what they'd thrown away. Mom's birthday came and went. I didn't show up, obviously, but I heard about it after. Jenna got in touch a week later and said the energy was weird, that people kept bringing me up, that Dad was quieter than usual. Apparently, Dad had been telling everyone I'd have a meltdown and cause a scene, so when I didn't show at all, he looked like an asshole. She also mentioned that the party was at some mediocre steakhouse because Dad claimed the reservation he made at Somewhere Special fell through. When I heard that, I nearly spit out my coffee. The $2,500 deposit I lost on that Italian place was worth every penny, just to imagine their faces when they ended up at Outback or whatever. Mom kept checking her phone all night, Jenna said. She barely touched her food. Good. Let that sink in. 2 weeks after Mom's birthday, the silence finally broke. I hadn't texted anyone, but I hadn't blocked them either. I wanted them to watch. Then my dad texted, your mother's been crying. You've made your point. Enough is enough. We have the Petersons' charity auction next week and people are asking about you. It's embarrassing. No apology, no ownership, just concern about their social image. That line, you've made your point, was the dumbest thing I'd ever read. He thought this was about proving something. He still didn't get it. None of them did. So I didn't reply. Not even a dot. 3 days later, Jenna texted asking to meet. Just her, no pressure. I waited a few hours, then agreed. Coffee, neutral ground. We met at this little cafe on the south side where none of our family ever went, because it wasn't exclusive enough, and didn't serve avocado toast or whatever. I got there early, sat by the window. She came in 10 minutes late, no makeup, hair in a messy bun, looking nothing like her usual polished self. She looked tired, but not physically tired. Tired in a way I recognized. First words out of her mouth. You were right, Bruce. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. She told me about the birthday, how it hadn't been fun at all. Mom spent the night fake happy, clinking glasses and laughing too loud. Dad paced around checking his phone, obviously expecting me to show up with some grand apology. Lisa spent the whole night humble bragging about her husband's new partnership at his surgical practice, worth mid-seven figures. She even had the balls to tell people I couldn't attend because I was having financial difficulties, and they were trying to respect my privacy. This from the woman who once asked me to retile her bathroom for free as a family favor, while wearing a watch that cost more than my truck. Jenna said the worst part was when Mom opened her gifts. Designer handbags, jewelry, spa vouchers, and then she got to the small box from our Aunt May, who's the only decent one besides Ryan. It was a handmade photo frame, with a picture of Mom and all three of us kids from when we were young. Mom burst into tears and had to leave the table. Dad followed her out and came back alone 20 minutes later, claiming she had a migraine. She kept asking about the Italian restaurant, Jenna said, like she somehow knew there was supposed to be a reservation there. Dad kept saying he didn't know what she was talking about, but she wouldn't let it go. Then Jenna said something that shocked me. After I left the chat, People started talking, really talking. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years asked what happened, why everyone was laughing at me one minute and acting like I disappeared the next. Brant messaged Jenna admitting the clown meme was shitty. Said he was just following the group vibe like a sheep, but at least he owned up to it. Even Uncle Ron, the only one in the family who works with his hands as a hobby, remembered when I fixed his garage door during a storm without asking for anything. He told Jenna nobody else in the family would have done that. They'd have called a service and sent him the bill. Remember when Lisa's basement flooded last year and you showed up at midnight with pumps and stayed until 4 a.m. getting the water out? Jenna asked. She told people at the party that some guy she hired did it. She didn't even admit it was you. Then she told me something I'll never forget. Mom said you were the one who always needed help. But now that you're gone, everyone realizes you were the one who always gave help. You're the only one who ever actually shows up when someone needs something, not just when there's something to gain. That hit me hard. Not because I needed recognition, but because I hadn't realized how much I was giving to people who never gave back. Jenna went quiet after that. She didn't ask me to come back or defend anyone. She just looked at me and said, "They only loved you when you were useful to them. Dad's been calling all your old clients trying to find out who you're working for now. And Mom's been showing people your Instagram posts of the luxury homes you've renovated like suddenly she's proud. It's disgusting. You know what Dad said at dinner last week?" She continued. He said, "Bruce is finally learning how to make connections with the right people. Took him long enough to listen to me. Like your success is somehow because of his advice, not in spite of it." That's when it all clicked. I wasn't the problem. I'd never been the problem. I was just the easiest person to blame when the system started breaking down. They built their version of family on status, money, and appearance. The second I stepped out of that mold but started succeeding on my own terms, they couldn't handle it. I left that cafe feeling strange. Not angry, not vindicated, just clear. Like a fog had finally lifted. After talking to Jenna, I didn't go home angry. I didn't call anyone to vent or type out some long message I'd never send. I just sat in my truck in the parking lot, staring at the gray sky, feeling clearer than I had in years. There wouldn't be a big confrontation or blow-up. I didn't want that. What was coming wasn't a moment. It was a movement. Slow, deliberate, unmistakable. I started with the company. The new branding Mason helped with had already doubled my client base. Now I went all in. Invested $20,000 in a targeted ad campaign focusing exclusively on the wealthiest neighborhoods. Hired a part-time administrator to handle bookings and billing, and started documenting projects with professional photography and drone footage. I even hired a videographer to do a mini documentary on a $1.2 million kitchen renovation I did for a local CEO. The video went mini viral in our area, getting shared among the exact crowd my parents desperately wanted to impress. I started getting calls from their friends, people whose homes I'd never been invited to despite growing up in the same circles. One woman, a close friend of my mother's, hired me to redo her master bathroom and couldn't stop talking about how Marion never mentioned how talented you are. I never mentioned my family, but it was all there. The success, the growth, the respect. And people noticed. Cousins who'd ignored my texts for years suddenly started following the business account. Lisa started liking my posts again. Always the ones where you could see expensive homes in the background. Dad even called the business line once, hanging up when my new assistant answered. I ignored it all. Instead, I posted a cryptic photo that seemed normal, unless you were paying attention. A stack of moving boxes with a caption that said, "New chapter loading." No location, no explanation. Just enough. Jenna texted the next morning, "Wait, are you moving?" Mom's freaking out. I didn't answer. What they didn't know was that I'd been making power moves behind the scenes. Remember that client whose kitchen I renovated? He was so impressed that he offered me a partnership opportunity, funding to expand my business into high-end home automation integration. We're talking whole house systems for multi-million-dollar properties. A $500,000 investment for 25% of the new division. I took it. Signed the paperwork on a Thursday. Didn't tell a soul except Marissa. The investor, David, had connections in Asheville, too. Turns out it's becoming a hotspot for wealthy remote workers looking for custom smart homes in beautiful settings. The plan was perfect. Expand the business there. Build a new life away from the toxic family dynamics, and actually enjoy watching my kids grow up without the constant judgment. Meanwhile, Marissa and I spent our evenings sorting, selling, and packing. We donated half our furniture and sold the rest online. Jake and Ellie helped pack their toys, and we let them draw on the boxes. Their excitement made everything easier. Kids don't grieve the way adults do. They don't see what's being left behind, only what's ahead. Every so often, Marissa would ask, "Are you scared?" And every time I'd say, "I've never been more certain of anything." The Asheville house would be ready in 6 weeks. Ryan sent photos, fresh paint, polished floors, a backyard with a maple tree big enough for a tire swing, and a workshop 3 times the size of my current garage. It was everything I never knew I wanted. Quiet, green, wide open, and no one around to tell me who I had to be. A week before the move, I opened the family group chat one last time. Messages had returned to normal. Photos of Lisa's husband's new Porsche, mom's plans for a summer trip to the Hamptons, restaurant links to places with $200 tasting menus. My name hadn't been mentioned in weeks, like I never existed. I didn't post anything. I just quietly left the chat. And that was the beginning of the real avalanche. Jenna called first, straight to voicemail. Then the texts started coming in. Lisa, what's going on? Mom says you're selling your house? Mom, we heard you're moving. Can we talk before you leave? Your father has some business contacts in commercial renovation he thinks might interest you. Always about money and connections. Never about me as a person. I didn't answer. I let it sit. Dad texted again. You're overreacting. Enough is enough. I heard about your new partnership with James Miller. Why didn't you come to me first? I could have gotten you a better deal. 25% is highway robbery. You're leaving money on the table because you're too stubborn to take advice. How the hell did he know about the partnership? I hadn't told anyone except Marissa. That's when I realized they'd been digging into my business, probably calling around to mutual acquaintances, trying to figure out how I was suddenly succeeding without their help. Still no apology. Still the same tone, like I owed them something. Like the years I spent trying to earn their love didn't matter the second I stopped trying. But they weren't the only ones watching. Something was happening behind the scenes. My aunt, who hadn't spoken to me in years, sent a note thanking me for helping her neighbor with his roof 2 summers ago when a tree fell on it during a storm. I barely remembered doing it. She ended with, "You always show up when people need you, not just when there's something in it for you." Brant sent another message, longer this time. He admitted the meme was cruel, said he got caught up in the group energy, and didn't realize how messed up it was until later. Said his marriage was falling apart because his wife was leaving him for someone who actually gives a shit about her as a person, not just as a status symbol. Said he respected what I was doing with my life, wished he had the guts to cut ties too. Then came the weirdest message, from my sister Lisa's husband. We'd never been close. He always treated me like I was the help when I came over to fix things around their house. But he sent a long text about how he'd never seen anyone stand up to my dad before, how he was suffocating under the family expectations, and how he sometimes wished he'd chosen a different path. It was bizarre coming from a guy who seemed to embody everything my family valued. I read these messages twice, then archived them all. I didn't need apologies anymore. I needed distance. The night before the move, my phone exploded with calls from my parents. I let them all go to voicemail. Dad's message was predictably self-centered. "This is ridiculous, Bruce. You can't just move across the country without discussing it with the family. What about your mother's feelings? What about your responsibilities here? Who's going to take care of the house when something breaks? This is just selfish." My mother's message was worse. Tearful, manipulative. "Bruce, please call me back. I don't understand what's happening. We've always supported you, even when you chose that career. We just want what's best for you. Please don't do this to me. I'm your mother." The audacity was astounding. They still saw themselves as the victims. The move was set for a Friday. We rented a truck, loaded it ourselves with help from a few close friends, and didn't say a word to the family. No goodbyes, no forwarding addresses, just gone. But I did leave one last breadcrumb. 3 days before the move, I incorporated my business in North Carolina, filed all the paperwork publicly with my new address clearly listed. Then I updated the business website with our new location, now serving Asheville and surrounding areas, along with a picture of me standing in front of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I knew they'd see it. They were too nosy not to look. Then, just before pulling out of the driveway, I posted a final photo on my personal account, our empty living room, sunlight on the floor. Caption: "Sometimes leaving toxic people behind is the only way to grow. Family isn't about blood or money. It's about who actually gives a damn when it counts." Then I turned off my phone. They didn't realize I wasn't running. I was finally walking in the right direction. We hit the road around 8 a.m. overcast. Cool, perfect weather for leaving everything behind. Marissa drove the SUV with the kids while I followed in the rental truck. Windows down, one arm hanging out. No music. I didn't need a soundtrack. Just the hum of tires on asphalt and the silence between towns. The drive to Asheville took almost 8 hours, but felt like minutes. No second guessing, no what-ifs, just this strange peace that grew deeper the further we got from Indiana. Like weightlifting from my shoulders that I hadn't even noticed was there. Halfway there, we stopped at a roadside diner. Jake asked if Grandma and Grandpa would visit us in our new house. I told him maybe someday, but not right away. Ellie asked if that made me sad. I had to think about it before answering honestly. No, sweetheart. Sometimes people can love you, but not be good for you. And that's okay. Ryan met us at the new house with a spare set of keys and 2 pizzas. The place was even better in person. Big wraparound porch, real trees that weren't suffocating in the suburbs, and space inside. Space to breathe. Space to build without shadows. The kids ran through every room, claiming spaces and yelling about how Ellie's walls had to be purple like the flowers outside. Marissa leaned against the counter and smiled. She didn't have to say anything. I knew she felt it too. That night, after the kids passed out on sleeping bags and half-built bunk beds, I sat on the porch and turned my phone back on. Messages poured in. I scrolled through them slowly, like turning pages in a book whose ending I already knew. Mom, please don't shut me out. This isn't how families work things out. We're worried about your financial stability. Your father says this business venture is a mistake. Lisa, you're tearing this family apart. Over what? A text? Dad says this partnership is going to fail without his connections. He's just trying to protect you. Even Jenna had cracked. You could have said goodbye. We're your family, Bruce. This isn't you. Mom found your restaurant reservation for her birthday. She's devastated. But the one that stood out was from Dad. You're acting like a child. Running away won't solve anything. When this falls apart, don't come asking for help. Your mother is inconsolable, and it's your fault. I expected more loyalty from a son I raised. I actually laughed. That was the best he had? Still trying to put me down, still assuming I'd fail without him, still making it about loyalty to him while showing none to me. I didn't respond, didn't rage or explain or argue. I just deleted every message, deleted the thread, and blocked all their numbers one by one. Quietly, cleanly, finally. No dramatic goodbye, no bitter speech. Just gone. We spent the next week settling in. I slowly transitioned the business. New clients, new licenses, new jobs already lined up thanks to Ryan's connections and my growing online reputation. I set up a showroom downtown for the home automation side of the business, complete with demo stations for potential clients to see what we could do. Marissa took a position at a private school that actually paid her what she was worth and started planning a little garden out back. The kids made friends on our street within days. We met neighbors who invited us to community cookouts without caring what we wore or what cars we drove. It wasn't instant magic, but it was ours. No one here cared about my last name or who my parents were. They just knew me as Bruce, the guy who built amazing things and played catch with his son in the backyard. Then a strange thing started happening. Messages from old friends back home. Hey, your mom was crying at the country club lunch saying you cut off the whole family. What happened? Your sister posted this long thing about forgiveness and family loyalty. Are you okay? Dude, your dad is telling everyone you had a breakdown after a business failure. He's offering to help anyone who knows where you are. It's weird. That was their narrative, that I'd lost it, that I needed help, that I'd failed, because they couldn't admit the truth, that I'd broken something they assumed I'd always be too loyal to walk away from. But I hadn't lost anything. I'd finally found peace, and nothing they could say, no rumor they could spread, could take that away. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't living in reaction to them. I was just living. 1 year in Asheville changed everything. It wasn't just a new beginning. It felt like someone had quietly handed my life back to me. The business exploded. The home automation partnership brought in clients I never dreamed of having. Pro athletes, tech executives buying mountain retreats, old money families renovating century-old estates. We cleared $1.2 million in revenue that first year, with projections to hit $2 million the next. I hired a team of 15 guys, all skilled craftsmen who took pride in their work. Marissa was thriving at her new school, where she was actually respected for her teaching skills, not treated like she had chosen a fallback career. Jake made the travel baseball team and was crushing it, and Ellie got accepted into a competitive dance program. We bought a second property, a small cabin by a lake, as a weekend getaway spot. For the first time ever, there was no weight on my chest when I woke up, no pressure to explain myself, no silent scoreboard where I was constantly losing just because I chose a different path. I barely thought about my family back in Indiana. Honestly, they felt like they belonged to a different life. Occasionally, I'd get messages through mutual friends. Someone heard my dad was telling people I got lucky with a business connection, or my mom had been asking around about Asheville real estate prices. I ignored it all. People like that don't change. They just change tactics. Then came the bomb I never expected. One Thursday morning in October, I got a voicemail from Lisa. Her voice sounded tight, controlled but with panic underneath. Dad's real estate company had collapsed. The market turned. Several major investments failed simultaneously. And worst of all, there was an investigation into some accounting irregularities. Turned out Dad had been cutting corners for years, misrepresenting properties, and playing fast and loose with investor money. They'd had to sell the house, the vacation property, the cars, everything. Mom's country club membership, gone. Lisa's husband had apparently been struggling too. A malpractice suit had cost him his partnership position, and they were downsizing temporarily. And here was the kicker. Dad and Mom were moving to Asheville to downsize and be closer to family. I laughed so hard I nearly crashed my truck. The fucking audacity. I didn't call back. I played the message twice, saved it for posterity, and didn't even mention it to Marissa. 2 weeks later, another message, this time from Dad himself. His voice sounded old, defeated. They were living in a condo on the outskirts of Asheville. Not the nice part. The medical bills from his emergency gallbladder surgery had wiped out what little they had left. Mom was looking for work, but at her age it was difficult. He asked if I could find it in my heart to help them out. Maybe a job for Mom at my office? Some contractor work for him as a consultant? The man who had called me a loser, who had told me construction wasn't a real career, was now asking me for a construction job. I saved that message too. Didn't return it. Then came the text from Mom. Bruce, please. We're family. We've lost everything. Your father's too proud to beg, but I'm not. We need help. Lisa can't help us. They're underwater on their mortgage. Jenna got laid off. You're our only hope. I showed it to Marissa that night after the kids were in bed. She read it twice and looked at me. What are you going to do? I smiled. Nothing. 2 days later, I was at a client meeting downtown when I spotted them. They were coming out of a budget diner, the kind with $7.99 lunch specials. My mother looked thinner than I remembered, older, her designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack basics. My father walked with a slight stoop now, his arrogance physically deflated. They didn't see me. I watched them from across the street as they climbed into a used Hyundai, a far cry from Dad's usual Mercedes. For a second, just a split second, I felt a twinge of something. Not guilt, not exactly pity, just recognition of how far they'd fallen. That weekend, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Jenna. She was in town, staying with Mom and Dad temporarily. Could we talk? I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. When she arrived, she looked exhausted. It's bad, Bruce. Really bad. The SEC investigation found evidence Dad was cooking the books for years. He's not going to jail because of his age, but the fines took everything. They're living on Social Security and what little Mom makes working retail at the mall. I sipped my coffee. And they need help. Your help. Lisa's husband lost his practice in the malpractice suit, and she's got her hands full with the kids. I got laid off and I'm barely making ends meet. You're the only one doing well. I looked at her for a long moment. Tell me something, Jenna. When Dad texted me that I was a loser and shouldn't come to Mom's birthday, when all of you laughed and sent memes, where was this family loyalty? She had the decency to look ashamed. We were wrong, so wrong. But Bruce, they're old. They've got nothing. I leaned forward. Do you know what I realized this past year? That all my life, I've been the emergency fund, the handyman, the emotional support, but never the success story, never worthy of respect, until I walked away and built something they couldn't take credit for. So you're just going to leave them with nothing? Out of spite? I smiled. Number not out of spite, out of self-respect. The next day, I sent a text to my mother. There's a small 2-bedroom house for rent on Maple Street. $1,100 per month. The landlord is expecting your call. First month's rent is paid. That's all you get from me. I didn't wait for a response. I blocked her number right after. 2 weeks later, Ryan told me they'd taken the house. It was small, basic, but clean and in a safe neighborhood. Not the luxury they were used to, not even close to what Marissa and I had now, but better than they deserved. I never went to see them. Never called. Never reached out in any way. They'd chosen money and status over me for decades, made me feel worthless because I valued different things. Now they had neither money nor status, and I had both. Plus the one thing they never had. Genuine happiness. Last week I was dropping Jake off at baseball practice when I saw my father sitting on a bench at the edge of the park. He looked old, diminished. He saw me too. Our eyes met across the parking lot. For a moment I thought he might approach, might finally offer the apology I'd once desperately wanted. Instead, he just stared, then looked down at his hands. I walked Jake to the field, gave him a hug, and told him I loved him, that I was proud of him, no matter what. As I walked back to my truck, I passed near enough to the bench to hear if my father spoke. He didn't, just kept staring at his hands, the same hands that had typed that message, that had pushed me away, that had held money as the only measure of a man's worth. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel vindicated or victorious. I just felt free. They were still trapped in their prison of pride and materialism, even without the material things. And I was still me, the same guy who worked with his hands, who showed up when people needed him, who valued family but now understood that family isn't just about blood. Sometimes when I see them around town, my mom scanning coupons at the grocery store, my dad sitting alone at the public library, I think about how easily they could have had a relationship with their grandchildren, how they could have been part of our lives. All it would have taken was a simple apology, some basic human decency. But they couldn't give that. Even now, broke and humbled, they still can't admit they were wrong. Dad still crosses the street when he sees me coming. Mom still watches my kids from a distance at the playground, never approaching. And that's the revenge I never knew I wanted. Not their suffering, not their begging, but their irrelevance. They chose money over their son, status over family. Now they have neither, and I have everything. Because the best revenge isn't making them pay. It's making them watch you thrive without them. Story 2. My parents told me to move out if I wasn't going to support my brother's future. So I did, with nothing but a backpack. 10 years later, they were homeless and begging me for help. I said no and drove off in the car. They sold my PC to buy. Hey Reddit, I usually only lurk here, but things have gotten out of hand, so I figured I would post her. That's what my mom told me 5 months ago during Thanksgiving dinner, like it was a fun fact. Everyone heard it. And no, it wasn't even the first time she said that. The first time was 10 years earlier, right after I asked why everything in the house revolved around Andrew, my older brother. I was 18. That night, they kicked me out. Now I'm 31 male CEO of a financial firm. 7 figures, penthouse, real suits, not the stuff you rent for prom. And yeah, they want back in. They've tried the whole "but we're family" line. Some people say I'm wrong for cutting them off. So here's the start of it. You tell me. I was born in a decent house. 2 parents, 2 incomes, suburbs, a backyard with a cracked trampoline. Looked normal from the outside. But I was never supposed to be in the picture. My parents had Andrew, 33 male, 2 years before me, and they were content. He was their golden boy from day one. Blonde hair, perfect teeth, the kind of kid who scored goals and smiled for every camera. Teachers loved him. Coaches praised him. My parents treated him like the second coming of Wall Street Jesus. Then I came along. I wasn't planned. They told me that. Proudly. My mom used to joke, "You were our little oopsie." But it wasn't a joke when I heard her say to my aunt over the phone, "Andrew was meant to succeed. Matthew just came along for the ride." That sentence stuck. Still does. Growing up, everything in our house bent around Andrew. The guy never cleaned up after himself. He'd throw his dirty laundry across the hallway like a dog marking territory. My mom? She'd just sigh, "Boys will be boys," and pick it up. Meanwhile, if I left my cereal bowl in the sink, she'd lose her mind. "You're old enough to be responsible." Andrew got a brand new mountain bike when he turned 13. Not some cheap Walmart special, one of those $600 giants with the gear shifters and front shocks. When I turned 13, I got a used bookshelf and a $10 Target lamp. "You like reading," they said. I remember once Andrew accidentally crashed my dad's old Honda, backing it out of the driveway. Screwed up the bumper and taillight. Guess who they blamed? Me. Said I distracted him. I was inside doing math homework. But the king of all moments came during his high school graduation. They threw him a full-blown party. I'm talking tents in the backyard, rented speakers, a banner, food trays from some Italian place. My mom invited everyone. Neighbors, co-workers, random people from church. They made a toast, gave him a new watch. When I graduated 2 years later, I got a small chocolate cake on a paper plate and a "you're lucky we're busy this weekend." And no, I didn't fail. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA, worked part-time at a grocery store to help with bills, and never got into any trouble. But that wasn't enough. Not when you're standing next to Andrew, the future lawyer. He wasn't even a good dude. Dude was smooth, I'll give him that. He could lie with a smile and charm your wallet out of your pocket. Teachers thought he was brilliant, but I saw his search history. Half his schoolwork was bought online. My dad found out once, shrugged it off. He's learning to delegate. That's leadership. Meanwhile, if I forgot to vacuum one Saturday, I'd get a full 20-minute lecture on how I'd never survive in the real world. Once, I needed $20 for a school field trip. Took me 4 days to get it. Andrew came home once with $200 missing from my dad's wallet, said it fell out. No one blinked. By the time I was 17, I had a job, a solid GPA, and barely left my room. Not because I was emo or depressed. I was tired of proving, of talking, of trying. Andrew strutted through life like everything was owed to him. He was that guy who thought he was too good to wait in line, too smart to study, and too important to be wrong. The worst part? The world let him get away with it. So did our parents. I think they liked the version of him they made up in their heads more than the real one. I remember this one night, we were both sitting in the living room. He was on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I was on the floor fixing my laptop, busted hinge. I'd been saving for months to buy a new one, but couldn't afford it yet. I asked him if he had any leftover parts or cables from his old machine. He laughed and said, "You should just ask Mom and Dad to get you a new one." Worked for me. I looked at him. He wasn't joking. He actually believed that if he asked, he'd get it. And he wasn't wrong. They bought him a MacBook the following week to help him with college apps. I was still taping the corner of my screen shut every night. So yeah, by the time I hit 18, I knew what the deal was. I was the extra. The spare tire, the backup plan. They weren't cruel about it. That's the thing. It was worse than cruel. It was polite indifference. And when I finally brought it up, asked why I always got the short end, they didn't even argue. My dad folded his paper and said, "You need to stop being dramatic." And my mom? She looked me dead in the eye and said the thing I'll never forget. We only wanted one child. Straight face, no hesitation. That's when I knew. It didn't matter how much I worked, helped, studied, saved, or stayed out of trouble. I wasn't a son to them. I was just the leftover. And the leftover was about to make a move they didn't see coming. I was 16 when I started building up the dream. You know, the one thing that made everything else tolerable. I didn't care about sneakers, parties, or prom. All I wanted was my own custom-built gaming PC. It wasn't even about gaming, not really. It was about ownership, control, something that was mine, that I built from the ground up piece by piece. No handouts, no begging, just me, a summer job, and a spreadsheet taped to my wall tracking every part. CPU, GPU, RAM, case, PSU. I used to watch PC building YouTube channels like they were religion. Every extra shift at the grocery store went into that build. I skipped meals sometimes just to save more. I didn't spend on clothes, didn't upgrade my cracked phone, didn't go out. My friends called me frugal. Truth? I was desperate. I was finally going to have something that couldn't be taken from me. Or so I thought. By the time I was 17, I had just over $1,400 saved. Enough to get a mid-tier but solid setup. Ryzen chip, 16 gigabytes RAM, decent graphics card. I even planned to paint the case myself with matte black and gold detailing. That money sat in a shoebox under my bed for months. I didn't trust banks, and, ironically, I especially didn't trust my parents. That shoebox was my vault. I kept the bills wrapped in a rubber band like a broken little mobster. I'd pull it out at night and flip through the stack, just to remind myself it was real, until the day it wasn't. It was a Sunday. Andrew had just gotten back from some 2-day business mentorship retreat he found online. Walked through the door like he'd been crowned emperor of tech startups. Aviators on inside, some knockoff leather briefcase swinging at his hip. Mom rushed to greet him, like he'd returned from war. "How was it, sweetheart? Did you learn anything?" He smiled like a politician. "Mom, I've got a pitch deck and everything. I just need startup capital. They said I've got potential." She looked at him like he was Elon Musk's younger cousin. "We'll figure something out." That sentence should have raised alarms. Instead, I went upstairs, minding my own business. 2 days later, I came home from my shift. My shoebox was gone. Not moved. Gone. I tore through the closet, flipped every drawer, lifted the bed, checked under the mattress. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe Mom cleaned my room again. She had this habit of going in unannounced. Treated my space like it was a storage unit she rented out. I marched downstairs. "Mom, have you seen my shoebox?" She didn't look up from her crossword puzzle. "What shoebox?" "The one under my bed. With the money. The PC savings." She paused. Just for a second. That pause said everything. "Your dad and I needed it for something important," she said, like she was talking about borrowing the car. I blinked. "You... what?" She finally looked up. "It was just sitting there. And it's not like you're using it for anything urgent?" I stared at her, jaw clenched. "It was for my computer." She waved her hand like I'd said I was saving for action figures. We'll make it up to you. Turns out something important was Andrew's startup fund. The kid wanted to create an app that paired gym trainers with clients. He called it FitFuse or some garbage like that. Had no coding background, no plan, just buzzwords and ego. And my parents? They ate it up like gospel. He just needs a chance, Dad told me when I confronted him later. I replied, "So you stole my chance to give him one?" He didn't flinch. "It's not stealing if it stays in the family." I swear, I felt my blood pressure spike like I aged 10 years in one sentence. I locked myself in my room for the rest of that night, laid on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like it was mocking me. That PC was my escape plan, my one joy, my tiny rebellion against being the unwanted one, and they sold it off like it was spare furniture. What made it worse? Andrew didn't even say thank you. No acknowledgement, no apology, not even a nod. He acted like the money had fallen from the sky. And a month later, the app flopped. Website never launched. He spent half the money on a refurbished MacBook and some branding consultant who ghosted him. The other half? Gone in gas, Uber Eats, and one extremely dumb attempt to bribe a community college classmate to build the app. That night, he came home and said, "Turns out the startup world's tougher than it looks." Then laughed. I laughed too. Then punched a hole in my closet door the second he left the room. They never paid me back. Every time I asked, it was some version of, "We'll talk later," or "Don't be petty." Mom even pulled the emotional blackmail card. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to raise two boys on a budget?" I said, "Then maybe you shouldn't have robbed the one who wasn't throwing money down the drain." She looked offended, like I was the problem. That's when I realized this wasn't about money. It never was. They didn't think I deserved the same chances. They didn't see me as someone they invested in. They saw me as a resource to be drained for the real son's benefit. You want to know the worst part? A few weeks after the whole thing fell apart, I walked past the living room and heard them talking. "Dad, Andrew just needs more time. He's got vision. Matthew's too rigid. He wouldn't know what to do with opportunity anyway." I stood there, back to the wall, listening to my father basically say I wasn't built for success. Meanwhile, I was the one working double shifts, paying for my own books, stacking every dollar like it was a life raft. And Andrew? Still getting praised for failing upwards. That was the day something inside me cracked. I stopped asking for anything. I started putting money directly into a new savings account. One I opened secretly at a different credit union under my own name. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave the bank card at home. I stopped mentioning anything I bought or saved for. If I wanted something, I got it quietly. No bragging, no updates, no more trust. But the betrayal burned under the surface. I carried it with me every day like a scar on the inside of my mouth, silent but raw. And the irony? That betrayal was just the prelude. Because what they did next made the stolen PC money feel like a parking ticket. It was a few months after my 18th birthday. College acceptance letters were rolling in. I got into a strong business program, top 10 in the state. My heart was pounding when I opened the envelope. I remember rereading the words, "We are pleased to inform you," like I was hallucinating. I had the grades. I had some scholarships. But I still needed help covering the gap. So I did something I swore I wouldn't. I asked my parents for help. That conversation, it deserves its own chapter. Because that's when they told me the college fund I'd been building since I was 15, under my dad's name, was gone too. That's when the last string snapped. That's when I finally saw them not as parents, but as people who never saw me as a son. I still remember the envelope. Thick cardstock. Blue seal. The kind that screams, "We matter more than you." When I opened it, I didn't feel like I'd made it. I felt relief. Like maybe I wasn't as useless as my parents made me feel every time Andrew got praised for tying his shoes. The letter said I'd been accepted into the University of Michigan's Ross Business School. Not community college. Not some joke diploma mill. Ross. I was 18, and for the first time, I thought I had a shot at building something real. I waited until dinner to tell them. Big mistake. We were eating spaghetti, one of those bland weekday meals. Nobody said anything unless the TV was too loud. Dad was halfway through slicing an apple when I cleared my throat. "I got accepted into Michigan," I said, calm, like I was trying not to sound desperate for approval. Nobody flinched. My mom looked up, nodded. "Oh, that's nice. That's it. No questions, no congratulations, no, 'I'm proud of you.' Just a flat, dry nod like I told her I took the trash out." Andrew, across the table, didn't even blink. He was pouring soda like this was beneath him. I laid the letter on the table. "I got a partial scholarship. I still need to cover about $20,000 a year. If you guys can help with the first year, I can get loans and work to handle the rest. Dad didn't even look up. We don't have it. That sentence was surgical. Cold. Director. No sugarcoat. Just a verbal boot to the ribs. I blinked. I've been saving since I was 15. That account, my college fund, it should have close to $12,000 in it. The room went still. My mom froze. Dad looked up finally and said, "We used it. Used. It. No warning, no heads up, not even a conversation." "Used it on what?" I asked, my voice cracking, even though I swore I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. "Andrew needed help," my mom said, folding her napkin like she was done with the subject. "His pre-law program wasn't cheap?" I didn't speak. Couldn't. Andrew took a slow sip of soda. Didn't say a word. Let me be clear. I worked from the age of 15. Grocery store. Dishwasher. Hell, I even helped repaint fences in the neighborhood for side cash. Every dollar that didn't go to bills went into that account. I couldn't open one myself, not until I turned 18. So my dad offered to keep it safe under his name. He promised, "I won't touch a cent. It's yours." And now it was gone. I pushed my chair back. It made that screeching sound you hear before fights. "So you stole from me?" I said. Dad's face hardened. "Don't start with the drama." Mom chimed in, voice sharp. "You're not entitled to that money. This family made sacrifices for you. You're not the only one with needs." "Yeah," I snapped. "But I'm the only one pulling my weight." Her fork hit the plate. "Excuse me? I've worked for everything while Andrew sits on his ass pitching failed apps and burning other people's money, and you reward him, again, with my savings?" Andrew finally spoke. "Don't make this personal, man. You're not the only one trying." "Trying?" I barked. "You blew $2,000 on fake logos and Thai takeout, and now my future's gone." That's when Dad slammed his hand on the table. "You need to leave." Just like that. Not, "Go cool off." Not, "We'll talk later." Just leave. I stood there frozen. Mom crossed her arms. "We gave you a roof, food, clothes. And this is how you speak to us? Get out of this house if you think you're so grown." I stared at Andrew. Still sitting. Still silent. "Nothing to say?" I asked. "You heard all of this. You saw what they did. You gonna back me up?" He shrugged. That shrug. Worse than every insult. Every lie. Every stolen dollar. I grabbed my bag. No shoes. No jacket. Didn't matter. I wasn't staying. I walked out into the night with my breath fogging up and my chest on fire. It wasn't cold enough to freeze, but it felt colder than I've ever been. The porch light buzzed behind me. The door slammed shut like it couldn't wait to erase me. 10 minutes later, it creaked open. It was my mom. She didn't look at me. Just tossed out 2 backpacks like she was dropping off trash. "One's got your stuff," she said. "The other's junk we didn't want. Go wherever you want." Then the door closed again. Final. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stood there like a glitch in their perfect little family software. Uninstall complete. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually I picked up those bags and walked down the street. No plan, no backup. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and called the only person I trusted, Jason. Jason was my best friend from high school. We used to trade notes in history class and roast the guidance counselor behind his back. Chill guy. Never asked too many questions. Never treated me like I was less. He picked up after 2 rings. I said, "Hey, you free?" He said, "Where are you?" "I'm coming." 30 minutes later, he pulled up in his beat-up Toyota. Faded paint, duct-taped side mirror, smell of old fries. Never been happier to see a junk car in my life. He didn't ask what happened. He just said, "Get in." That night, I crashed on a mattress in his living room, used a hoodie as a pillow. The ceiling fan clicked every 4 seconds. The place smelled like old laundry and ramen seasoning, but I felt more safe there than I ever had at home. I stared at the ceiling all night, wide awake, mind spinning. Not about revenge, not even about college. Just one thought. I'm on my own now, and no one's coming to help. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs. Jason's mom was in the kitchen. "Are you staying for breakfast?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't press. Didn't ask about my parents. Just made me a plate like I was part of the house. First meal I'd had in weeks that didn't taste like resentment. 3 days later, I got a text from my grandfather. "Come over. I heard what happened." That's it. No emojis, no fluff. I took the bus to his place. He opened the door wearing a bathrobe and an old t-shirt that said, "Retired but dangerous." Didn't waste time. "Is it true?" I nodded. He sat down. "Your dad always was an idiot." That's the closest thing I ever heard him say that resembled anger. Then he leaned forward, hands steepled. You're not staying with Jason forever. You're coming here. I blinked. You're serious? He nodded. That house forgot how to be a family a long time ago. But you're still blood. You still matter. He cleared out his home office, made it a room for me. Small, creaky bed, old desk, clean window. The walls were lined with books and random war memorabilia. I didn't care. It felt safe, like a base. He didn't baby me, didn't give me money, but he gave me something I hadn't had in years. A choice. He said, go to college or don't, but don't give them the power to decide your worth. That sentence stuck. It became fuel. I applied for federal loans that same week, got approved, found a part-time job at a coffee shop, worked mornings, took classes at night, biked to campus in freezing wind with holes in my gloves, ate instant noodles, studied until my eyes burned. But I never asked my parents for a damn thing again. They cut me off? Fine. I'd show them what a mistake really looked like when it outruns them, outbuilds them, and never looks back. I was 18, broke, and sleeping on a borrowed mattress with 2 backpacks and no clue what came next. But I knew one thing for sure. If I went back to that house, I wasn't walking out a second time. So I didn't look back. I put my head down and moved. First thing I did was get a job at a coffee shop near campus. They didn't ask many questions. The manager liked that I showed up early, didn't complain, and knew how to keep my head down. I worked the opening shift, 6 a.m. to noon, cleaning tables, burning my fingers on espresso machines, sweeping sidewalks before the sun even came up. The pay was trash, but it was enough to keep me moving. Dorms were tight. I shared a room the size of a closet with a guy who snored like a dying engine and left his socks everywhere. Didn't matter. It was mine. I had a student ID, a schedule, a laptop that barely held a charge, and a list of classes that looked like a death sentence. I applied for every scholarship, grant, and low-interest loan I could find. Took whatever help I could get, but never from my parents. Not a single call, not even a fake birthday text. It was like I died and they forgot the funeral, which honestly made things easier. College wasn't some movie montage. It was brutal. During midterms, I'd sleep maybe 3 hours a night. When my shift ended, I'd run to class. Then go back to the coffee shop to close on weekends. I ate cup noodles in library stairwells. My clothes smelled like burnt milk and sweat. I missed more events than I can count. Some nights I'd come back to the dorms and just stare at the ceiling, muscles twitching from exhaustion, wondering if this was even worth it. But every time I thought about quitting, I saw their faces again. My mom's cold stare, my dad's smug tone, Andrew's silence. I remembered the PC money, the college fund, the night they tossed my bags like garbage, and suddenly I wasn't tired anymore. There was one person who stayed in touch, my Aunt Everly. She wasn't loud about it, just little check-ins, a text before exams, a call after a rough week. She'd swing by once a month with hot food or cold meds. She never asked for details, never pushed for gossip. Once I told her I was fine, and she said, "You don't have to be. Just keep going." She didn't take sides, but I could see the guilt in her eyes whenever my parents came up. She didn't make excuses for them. She didn't try to fix anything. She just showed up, quiet, consistent, and exactly when I needed it. Graduation came fast. I was 22, standing on a crowded lawn in a cheap gown, holding a degree with my name on it. The sun was out, the wind was light, and I didn't scan the crowd. I already knew they weren't there. They didn't even know the date, but Everly was. She sat 3 rows from the back with a bouquet of gas station flowers and a proud smile that said everything I never heard from my parents. I didn't cry. I didn't get emotional. I just looked at her, nodded, and said, "I made it." 3 months later, I got an offer from a mid-sized financial firm in Chicago. Salary was $72,000 starting, more than fair for a fresh grad. I accepted on the spot. I moved into a shared apartment with 2 other guys, one who played guitar at midnight and another who stole food like a raccoon. Didn't care. I was working. I was building. I tracked every dollar. Split paychecks into rent, loans, savings, and don't touch unless you're dying money. I skipped vacations, turned down parties, lived on black coffee and pre-packed rice bowls. Every dollar was ammo. Every hour was leverage. 4 years passed. By 26, I'd paid off every loan and had 5 figures in savings. No debt, no help, no shortcuts, just grind. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It came in a small moment. I was sitting in a team meeting, watching a bunch of execs debate over a company's liquidity crisis. They were going in circles, spewing jargon, but I saw the answer, clear as day. I wrote it out, showed it to my supervisor after the meeting. He looked at it for 5 seconds and said, "Damn, this could have saved us an hour." I wasn't trying to impress. I was just wired different. I understood money because I had to fight for every cent. These guys played with it. I survived on it. That's when I started thinking, I could do this better. The idea of starting my own firm started as a whisper, but it didn't leave. I'd catch myself rewriting pitch decks in my head, rethinking how meetings were run. I started studying mergers in my free time, took online courses on business law, wrote plans in a Google Doc no one knew about. I didn't tell anyone, not even Jason. But every night after work, after the gym, after dinner, I'd stay up mapping it out. Clients, services, structure, numbers, no fantasy talk, no hype, just the math. Lynx Capital started as a file name on my laptop. It became real when I pulled the trigger. I took $20,000 out of savings, rented a small office, third floor of a busted building, no windows, water stains on the ceiling. I hired 2 interns and a secretary from Craigslist, used folding chairs for the first 2 months. No website, just a mission. We don't sell fluff. We fix problems. Fast. Our first client came through a contact at my old job. Their books were a mess. Cash flow was bleeding. We cleaned it up in 6 weeks. After that, word spread. By the time I turned 30, Lynx Capital was pulling 7 figures. I wasn't rich yet, but I was finally undeniable. Then Thanksgiving happened. Out of nowhere, Everly called and asked me to come to dinner. Said the whole family would be there. My first instinct? Hang up. But she said one thing that changed my mind. It's time for them to see who you became, and who they lost. I didn't go for peace. I went to confront not with yelling, not with fists, with facts. I pulled up to her house in a clean black car. Nothing flashy, just sharp. Carried a bottle of wine that cost enough to make a point. Walked in and scanned the room. There they were, my parents, Andrew. Same smug posture, same fake smiles. When they saw me, they barely reacted. Andrew smirked. Well, look who decided to crawl back. I didn't respond, didn't need to. I just watched, quiet, collected, and waited for the moment. Because this time, I wasn't the kid who got kicked out. I was the guy who held the hammer. The thing about returning to a place that once broke you, you don't feel small anymore. You feel surgical. I didn't show up to Thanksgiving wearing a crown. I showed up in a charcoal suit with quiet confidence. Everly opened the door before I knocked. You came, she said, surprised but solid. I nodded. You asked. Inside, the house was already loud. Clinking forks, shuffling chairs, TV humming in the background. But as soon as I stepped in, the energy shifted. Some faces turned. Some blinked like they'd seen a ghost. Others acted like I was just a cousin from out of town. My parents didn't even pretend to be awkward. My dad gave me a nod like I was the plumber here to fix the leak. My mom raised an eyebrow, then turned away like she smelled something stale. Andrew? He made sure to be louder than everyone else. Well, 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 he called out from across the room. Look who finally came home. That's a nice bottle, Maddie. You trying to impress us? I smiled. Short, clean. I don't try. I walked past him. Didn't break stride. Just enough to make it clear. I wasn't here to perform. I was here to observe. Everly made space at the dinner table. I sat, sipped my water, and listened. For 45 minutes, I said nothing. Just watched Andrew work the room like a wedding DJ, telling stories, name-dropping, tossing in buzzwords he barely understood. And now with this new client, my team's looking at closing a $2 million deal. That caught attention. People turned. Chatter dipped. My mother chimed in like she'd rehearsed it. It's with Lynx Capital. Very big name now. You've probably seen them in the business news. My father nodded proudly. One of the top financial firms in the state. I nearly laughed, but I didn't. Because I already knew what they didn't. The company Andrew was bragging about? Mine. He wasn't on the deal. He wasn't in the meetings. He wasn't even on the radar. I personally negotiated that contract. Spent 6 weeks going back and forth with Bennett and Rowe Capital's director. Andrew must have overheard something at work and decided to LARP his way into the credit. And here he was, spinning it like he'd just rescued the economy. I sipped my water. Let the room eat it up. The moment to strike would come. And when it did, it wouldn't be loud. It'd be surgical. That moment came when a relative, some aunt on my mom's side, turned to me between bites of mashed potatoes and asked, "And what about you, Matthew? What are you up to these days?" Dead silence. My dad's fork stopped midair. My mom looked down. Before I could open my mouth, my father cut in. Matthew hasn't done anything worth mentioning. I stayed quiet. He continued. He's always been a little off track. You know, not everyone finds their place in life. He was kind of, well, an accident. We only ever planned for one child. Someone gasped, someone else coughed. Andrew smirked. I didn't flinch. I'd heard that line too many times. But this time, someone else responded. Everly. She stood up slowly, set her glass down. That's enough. Her voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the room like a mic drop. You don't feel embarrassed saying that in front of all these people? She turned, eyes sharp. That mistake you disowned? He's the one who built something out of nothing. He's the one who never took a cent from you after you kicked him out with a pair of torn-up backpacks. And you're sitting here acting like he owes you silence? She looked around the room, then landed on Andrew. And Matthew isn't just doing fine. He's the founder and CEO of Lynx Capital. Yes, that Lynx Capital. And he didn't need to use anyone's name to get there. The room froze. Andrew's face dropped like a bad poker hand. But he recovered fast. Cocky people always do. He stood up, tone dripping with fake laughter. That's ridiculous. Are we just making things up now? Matthew's the CEO? Please. I'm literally about to close a deal with them, and I've never even seen his name in the emails. He looked at me, smiling, daring me to flinch. Mom jumped in. This boy's always been a dreamer, always reaching for things out of his league. Dad followed. What's he ever built? Some paper company in a rented office? I waited. Let them finish. Then I said one sentence. You have 5 minutes to apologize. Dead quiet. Someone dropped a fork. My mom actually laughed. Apologize? For what? I stood up, calm, hands in my pockets. I wasn't going to embarrass anyone tonight, but since we're making things public, fine. I pulled out my phone, walked to the side of the room, and dialed. Everyone watched. It rang once, then connected. Jack, I said. It's Matthew. Quick question. You know Andrew Peterson? There was a pause. Who? He works at Bennett and Rowe. Says he's closing the Lynx Capital deal. Another pause. Then Jack's voice came back sharp and loud enough through the phone for people nearby to hear, that clown? Never even been in the room. Who gave him permission to speak on our behalf? I thanked him and hung up. 2 minutes later, Andrew's phone started ringing. He stared at the screen like it was on fire. He answered, walked away, but not fast enough. Jack's voice boomed through the speaker. You ever pretend to represent this company again? I'll have you blacklisted from every financial firm in the city. Do you understand me? Andrew's voice dropped to a whisper. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I sat back down. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I looked at my father. Still think I haven't done anything worth mentioning? He stared at his plate. My mom opened her mouth, then shut it. Andrew returned, white as paper, sweating through his dress shirt. No one clapped. No one defended him. The silence? Delicious. Everly leaned over and whispered, that was overdue. I stood up again, buttoned my jacket. If you'll excuse me, I think I've had enough. She grabbed my wrist. Thank you for showing up. I nodded. Thank you for being the only one who ever did. And I walked out. 2 days later, the fallout landed. I was in a boardroom when the receptionist buzzed my line. Mr. Peterson, she said carefully. There's a group downstairs, 4 adults and 1 child. They say they're your family. They're asking to speak to you. I pulled up the lobby cam. There they were. Mom, Dad, Andrew, his wife, his kid, all of them. Andrew looked wrecked. I didn't take the call. I called my lawyer instead. 10 minutes later, he met them in the lobby. No smiles, no greetings, just paperwork. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Matthew Peterson, he said, voice steady. You are to cease all contact, verbal, physical, digital. Any further harassment will be met with legal consequences. Andrew tried to interrupt. Got shut down. Security walked them out without drama. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Andrew got fired. Bennett and Rowe didn't make a scene. They just cut him loose. Security walked him out of the building before lunch. His badge deactivated. His access revoked. His name stripped from the email directory by 3 p.m. I didn't call it in. I didn't have to. Jack pulled the plug himself. By the end of the week, Andrew's name was unofficially blacklisted across every mid-level finance firm in the state. The guy went from wearing $400 loafers to begging recruiters to call him back. Didn't work. Nobody wants a fraud. Andrew tried to pivot, said he'd start his own consulting group, built a site on Wix, made a LinkedIn post full of buzzwords, 2 likes, no clients. 6 weeks later, the site disappeared. Then came the debts. Turns out Andrew had been living on borrowed money and fake promises. Car loan, personal loan, credit cards, a failed crypto side hustle. and a $40,000 business investment he took from a family friend who finally wanted it back. He couldn't pay any of it, so he did what golden children do when things collapse. He ran home to mommy and daddy. But the house wasn't safe either. Dad had taken out a second mortgage years ago to invest in Andrew's future. The payments were getting tight. Mom had stopped working after her hip surgery. Savings dried up. When the foreclosure notice hit the mailbox, my mom called my aunt first, begged her to help. My aunt said she didn't have the money. Then she called me, didn't even use my name. She opened with, "We're in trouble." No, "How are you?" No, "We're sorry." Just a straight shot beg, like I owed them something. I didn't yell. I didn't hang up. I listened. She said they were behind on everything, that my dad's credit was shot, that they were trying to find a smaller place, but no one would approve them without a cosigner, that Andrew was going through a hard time, that the baby was sick, that the rent prices were outrageous, that I wouldn't understand because I've never had to worry about money. That last part almost made me laugh. I said one sentence. "You made your decision when you sold my future for his." She didn't reply. I hung up. A week later, they showed up in person. The receptionist buzzed my office line again. "Mr. Peterson, your family is in the lobby." I didn't even look at the camera this time. I called legal. "Same guy as before." "Escalate it," I said. They got served that afternoon. A cease and desist with an additional clause. Any further uninvited contact would trigger legal action for harassment. I watched the footage afterward. They didn't cry. They didn't scream. They just stood there, stunned, then left. They never came back. 2 months later, I got a text from my aunt. One line. "They're staying in a shelter near the west side. House is gone. Credit's gone. They're broke." That was it. Andrew applied for bankruptcy. My father tried to drive for Uber, got denied for insurance reasons. My mom filed for early Social Security and got denied on a technicality. The shelter let them stay for 30 days. Then they were rotated out. They tried couch hopping. No one wanted them. Jason sent me a photo once. My parents outside a public library with 2 plastic bags and no plan. Dad sitting on a bench, staring into nothing. Mom trying to keep her phone charged off a wall socket. Andrew was nowhere to be seen. Guess he bailed when things got real. 3 weeks after that, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Folded 3 times. It said, "We made mistakes. We know, but we're still your parents. Please don't let us die like this." It wasn't signed. I recognized my father's handwriting. I didn't respond. I didn't shred it either. I stapled it to the back of my old college acceptance letter, the one they shrugged off. Filed it. Proof. That's all it was. Story 3. Parents demanded I give up my master bedroom in the house I pay for their golden boy. So, I'm 26M, and for the last year or so, I've been living with my parents in the city. Sounds pretty basic, right? But it's not what you think. This wasn't some move back home because I can't afford rent situation. I'm actually the one who bought the house. I pay the entire mortgage, and I cover all the groceries, bills, everything. My parents, they don't pay a dime. To give you some background, my parents, Liz, 52F, and Tom, 55M, are both retired teachers. They'd been living out in the country for years, but after they stopped working, they decided they wanted to move to the city. They were bored with the quiet life and wanted to be closer to more exciting stuff. Or at least that's what they said. I thought, why not? I'm making good money as a software engineer, and the city has better job opportunities anyway. Plus, I figured I'd help them out since they've done a lot for me growing up, normal family stuff. So, we moved into this nice 3-bedroom house in the city. I'm not talking mansion level or anything, but it's definitely a nice place. 3 bedrooms, a little backyard, and a big enough living room for everyone to hang out. Since I'm the one paying the mortgage, I made sure to claim the master bedroom. It's got a walk-in closet and its own bathroom, which is clutch because honestly, sharing a bathroom with anyone else? No, thank you. The second bedroom, that's my home office. Since I work from home about 80% of the time, I set it up just the way I wanted. Dual monitors, a comfortable chair, the whole deal. I figured the third bedroom would stay as a guest room for when family visited or whatever. Simple enough, right? At first, everything was fine. My parents were just happy to be in the city, and we all settled into a pretty comfortable routine. They did their thing, gardening, watching TV, whatever retirees do, and I worked my job, paid the bills, and took care of the house. I didn't mind paying for everything. I make 6 figures, and it's not like they have much income coming in besides their pensions. Plus, it's family. You don't charge family rent, right? Then came the turning point. And let me tell you, it all happened faster than I could have imagined. One day my mom dropped this casual comment at breakfast, like it was no big deal. She goes, your brother Jake and Emma are thinking about moving to the city. They're not doing so well back in the old town, and Emma's pregnant, so they could really use the help. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jake, 28M, and Emma, 26F, had always been the kind of couple who jumped from one bad situation to another. They weren't exactly struggling, but they weren't thriving either. Plus, Emma being pregnant threw a whole new layer into the mix. I thought, okay, maybe they'll move to the city and get a small apartment or something. But no, my mom had different plans. A few days later, she sat me down and with this super innocent tone, she said, "We've invited Jake and Emma to come stay with us. It'll just be for a little while until they get back on their feet." Now, this is the part where I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. I just kind of nodded along, figuring, okay, whatever, they'll stay for a bit and then find their own place. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of the chaos. My parents didn't exactly ask if I was cool with them moving in. They just told me after they'd already invited them. I was still processing the whole thing when Jake and Emma showed up at our doorstep a week later with bags in hand, looking like they were moving in for the long haul. So here's the deal. They move in, and right away, it's clear that they think they're staying indefinitely. I'm already feeling the stress build up because I'm the one paying for everything. Groceries, utilities, mortgage, you name it. And now I've got 2 more people to feed and take care of. No one even asked if I was okay with it. They just moved in like it was the most natural thing in the world. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my brother. He's family after all. But Jake's not exactly the most responsible person in the world. He's the kind of guy who always finds himself in messy situations and then relies on other people to bail him out. And Emma, she's nice enough, but she's got this entitled attitude that just rubs me the wrong way. Like she's pregnant, so she automatically deserves special treatment from everyone around her. But here's where things start getting really messed up. A couple of days after they moved in, Emma starts making these little comments. The type that seem harmless but are actually really annoying. She'd say things like, "This place is so big, it must be hard for you to clean it all by yourself," or "I can't wait until the baby's here. We're going to need a lot of space for all the baby stuff." I didn't think too much of it at first, but then came the kicker. One evening, after I just finished a long day of work, Jake and Emma pulled me aside and said they wanted to talk. I thought, all right, maybe they're going to apologize for taking up space and eating all the food without offering to help. But nope. Instead, Emma, all casual, says, "So, we've been thinking, it would make more sense for us to take the master bedroom." I just stared at her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We need more space," Jake added, like it was obvious. "The baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has the walk-in closet and the private bathroom." Now keep in mind, I pay for the entire mortgage. The house is in my name. I also pay for all the groceries, and I've been supporting the whole household without asking for anything in return. And here they were, asking me to give up my own bedroom? I was floored. I couldn't even respond right away. It was like the audacity just hit me all at once. Finally, I said, "Why don't you just take the spare room? It's plenty big, and it's already set up for guests." Emma wasn't having it. "But that room doesn't have a walk-in closet, and the baby's going to need space." I stared at them for a few seconds, trying to stay calm. "I'm not giving up my room," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "You can have the spare room, or you can find somewhere else to stay." Jake looked a little shocked that I wasn't just caving in. But Emma? She looked downright offended. And that's when I realized this wasn't going to end well. All right. So after that awkward conversation where Jake and Emma straight up asked me to give up my room, I thought that maybe they'd realize how ridiculous they sounded and back off. I mean, who in their right mind asks the person paying the mortgage, buying the groceries, and keeping the lights on to just give up their space like that? But nope. Of course, that's not what happened. The next couple of days, I started noticing these little things. For one, Jake and Emma were suddenly really comfortable. Like, too comfortable. They'd spread their stuff out all over the living room, had their shoes kicked off near the couch, and Emma was already talking about where she was going to put all the baby stuff, like the house was theirs or something. I wasn't saying anything yet, but it was building up inside me, that feeling that something was about to go down. So one day I had to go into the office for a few hours. Normally, I work from home, but sometimes I have meetings that I can't miss. Anyway, I get home around lunchtime to grab something to eat, and I notice something strange as soon as I walk in. My stuff, my personal stuff, is in the hallway. My clothes are in a pile on the floor, my computer monitor is just sitting there, unplugged, like someone was in the middle of moving it. My heart's already starting to race because I know what this means, but I had to see it for myself. I walk to my room and sure enough, there's Emma, standing in the middle of it, packing up the last of my things. She doesn't even look surprised when I walk in. She just glances over at me like, "Oh, hey, I was just finishing up." I couldn't believe it. "What the hell are you doing?" I blurt out, probably louder than I meant to. She had the nerve to look all calm and collected, like this was no big deal. "Your mom said we could start moving our stuff in here. The baby's coming soon and we need the space," she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I could feel my blood boiling. My mom said, my mom, who doesn't pay a single cent toward the mortgage, thought it was okay to just hand over my room to Jake and Emma without even talking to me? I wasn't about to let this slide. "No," I said, stepping into the room. "You're not moving into my room. I already told you guys to take the guest room." Emma didn't like that. She crossed her arms and gave me this look, like I was the one being unreasonable. "The guest room is too small for the baby, and there's no closet. We need more space." I wasn't having it. "I don't care. You're not taking my room. I'm the one paying the mortgage. I'm the one who's been paying for everything in this house, and you and Jake aren't even contributing anything. If you need more space, you're welcome to find your own place." At this point, I was really angry, and I could tell Emma was getting upset too, but I didn't care. She didn't back down, though. "Your mom said it was fine," she repeated, like that was the final word. Now, here's where I lost it. I marched back out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called my mom, who, by the way, wasn't even home at the time. The second she answered, I didn't even let her say hello. "Mom, did you tell Jake and Emma they could move into my room?" There was a long pause on the other end, like she didn't know what to say. Finally, she admitted, "Well, I thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you already have the office. It's not like you're using the room for much." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now?" I snapped. "I pay the mortgage, I pay for all the groceries, I pay the bills, and you think it's okay for Jake and Emma to just take over my room?" My mom tried to calm me down, saying it wasn't a big deal and that we're all family, but I was done listening. "I'm not giving them my room, and if they don't move their stuff out, they're going to need to find another place to stay." By this point, Emma must have heard me, because she came storming out of the room, looking furious. "You're seriously going to throw us out? With a baby on the way?" That's when Jake walked in. He must have heard the commotion from outside because he came in looking all pissed off too. "What's going on?" he demanded. So I laid it out for him. "What's going on is your wife thinks she can just take over my room without even asking, and I'm telling you both right now, it's not happening. You can either stay in the guest room or you can leave." Jake wasn't happy about that. He got all defensive, saying how they're family and how I should be willing to make sacrifices for them. But at this point, I was beyond reasoning. "Sacrifices? I'm already paying for this entire house. What are you guys contributing, huh? Nothing. And now you think you can just walk in and take over?" The yelling got pretty loud at that point, and I think it was clear that neither side was backing down. My mom tried calling me back, but I ignored her. I was too pissed off to deal with her excuses. Jake kept going on and on about how I wasn't being fair, how they had a baby on the way, and how families should stick together in tough times. But I'd had enough. I turned to both of them and said, "You've got until the end of the day to move your stuff out of my room. If you don't, I'll move it out for you." Emma stormed off, slamming the door behind her, and Jake just stood there glaring at me like I was the bad guy. But I didn't care. I wasn't about to let them walk all over me in my own house, especially when I was the one paying for everything. For the rest of the day, I stayed in my office trying to cool down. I didn't want to deal with either of them, and I knew if I went back out there, it would just turn into another argument. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. They weren't going to take this lying down, and I had a feeling my mom would get involved again. But I wasn't about to back down either. Not this time. After that blow-up with Jake and Emma, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally back off. I mean, I was crystal clear. My room wasn't up for grabs, and they either stay in the guest room or find somewhere else to live. Seemed pretty simple to me. But of course, things didn't go that smoothly. The next day, I kept mostly to myself. I wasn't looking for more drama, and honestly, I was still fuming from how things had gone down. I spent most of my time working in the office, trying to pretend like everything was normal. But by the time dinner rolled around, I could feel the tension in the air. It was like everyone was avoiding each other, tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. I didn't mind the quiet. If Jake and Emma were finally going to stay in the guest room without causing more issues, I figured I could live with that. But then something happened that pushed me over the edge. That evening, I walked into the kitchen to grab some food. I had bought all the groceries, like I always do, but when I opened the fridge, it was practically empty. I'm talking about food I just bought 2 days ago. Gone. I checked the freezer, same deal. I knew my parents didn't eat like that, and it wasn't me, obviously. So who else could it be? Jake and Emma. They'd probably helped themselves to everything without even asking. I was already irritated, but I tried to brush it off, thinking, whatever, I'll just pick up more tomorrow. But it wasn't just the food. When I went to sit down at the table to eat, my mom came into the kitchen, not looking me in the eye. She quietly made plates for herself, my dad, Jake, and Emma. And then, she didn't make one for me. At first, I thought she must have forgotten, so I just kind of waited, but she finished serving everyone and sat down. I was left standing there like an idiot, watching as they all started eating. I'm not going to lie, I felt the anger bubbling up again. It was like they were all punishing me for standing up for myself. I looked at my mom, trying to keep my cool. You didn't make me a plate? She barely looked up. You don't want to help the family, you don't eat with the family, she said, as casually as if she was commenting on the weather. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? I pay for everything here. The groceries, the mortgage, and now I'm being iced out? She didn't even answer. My dad just kind of sighed and kept eating like nothing was happening, which pissed me off even more. Jake and Emma were sitting there with this smug look on their faces, like they had won some kind of power play. Emma even had the nerve to smile at me when I walked by. I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't about to be treated like some outsider in the house that I paid for. I slammed the fridge door shut and stormed out of the kitchen, my mind racing. I knew what I had to do next. I went straight to my room, grabbed my laptop, and started looking up eviction notices. I figured if they didn't want to treat me with respect, then they could find somewhere else to live. I mean, enough is enough, right? I'm not a free hotel service. Within an hour, I had the documents ready. I printed out 2 sets, one for Jake and Emma, and one for my parents. It felt weird, kicking out my own family, but at this point, they had crossed the line. They'd been disrespecting me for weeks, acting like the house was theirs, and then freezing me out because I wouldn't cave to their ridiculous demands. I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. Once the notices were printed, I walked out to the living room where everyone was sitting, pretending like nothing was wrong. I didn't say a word, I just slapped the papers down in front of my parents, then handed another set to Jake and Emma. What's this? Jake asked, picking up the papers and scanning them. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could manage. If you're not out by tomorrow, I'm calling the police. Jake's face went pale. He wasn't expecting this, not at all. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious, I replied. I'm done with this. You've been freeloading here without contributing a thing, and now you think you can take over my house? No, not anymore. Jake stood up, glaring at me, but I didn't budge. I was taller than him, bigger than him, and I wasn't going to be intimidated by his little temper tantrum. We're family, he said through gritted teeth. You can't just throw us out. Yes, I can, I said, stepping closer. I'm the one who pays for this house. Not you, not Emma, and not Mom and Dad. If you don't want to be respectful, you don't get to stay here. Emma, of course, started crying, as if that was going to change anything. I'm pregnant and you're kicking us out? What kind of brother are you? I'm the brother who's been paying for everything while you two take advantage of me, I shot back. You have 24 hours. That's more than generous. Jake looked like he wanted to argue more, but I could see the realization starting to sink in. I wasn't bluffing. My mom, who had been sitting there quietly this whole time, finally spoke up. You can't do this, honey. They're your brother and sister-in-law. This is family. But I didn't care anymore. I've already done it, I said, pointing to the eviction notice in her hands. You've got 30 days to find somewhere else, too. If you're not gone by then, I'll be taking legal action. The room went dead quiet after that. My dad didn't say a word, just sat there staring at the table like he didn't know what to do. My mom looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't backing down. This wasn't about being nice anymore. This was about standing up for myself and not letting them walk all over me. After a few long minutes, I walked back to my room, leaving them to process everything. I locked my door, sat down at my desk, and took a deep breath. I'd just done something I never thought I'd have to do, kick out my own family. But you know what? It felt good. It felt right. I wasn't going to be taken advantage of anymore. The house was dead quiet for the rest of the night. No one came to my door. No one tried to argue with me. I think they all realized that I wasn't messing around anymore. If they didn't respect me, they didn't deserve to live here. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Update 1. After handing out those eviction notices, I figured the tension in the house would either explode or everyone would finally back off and take me seriously. Either way, I knew there was no going back. I'd drawn my line in the sand, and I wasn't about to let anyone step over it again. But instead of the blow-up I was expecting, The house got quiet. Too quiet, honestly. The morning after, I woke up early, earlier than usual, just because I couldn't really sleep. I guess I was kind of waiting for something to happen. You know, like maybe Jake would come banging on my door demanding I change my mind, or maybe my parents would start pleading with me to reconsider. But none of that happened. When I finally walked into the kitchen to make breakfast, it was empty. No one was up yet. No Jake, no Emma, no parents. For a second, I thought maybe they had packed up in the middle of the night and left without saying anything, but I knew that was just wishful thinking. I made my coffee, sat down at the table, and waited. I wasn't in the mood to make small talk, and I wasn't in the mood to explain myself again. What I'd done was necessary. They'd pushed me too far, and there was no way I could keep living like that. They didn't respect me, and they sure as hell didn't respect the fact that I was paying for everything. All I wanted was some basic decency, and they couldn't even give me that. After a while, my mom came into the kitchen, her face looking like she'd barely slept. She didn't say anything at first, just grabbed a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. It was the first time we'd really been alone since I handed her the eviction notice. The awkward silence hung in the air for what felt like forever, before she finally spoke up. "Honey," she started, her voice soft and tired, "I know things have gotten out of hand." I didn't say anything. I just stared at my coffee, waiting for the rest of whatever she was going to say. I knew an apology was coming, or at least some version of one, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. "I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you and your brother," she continued, her voice cracking just a little. "We were just trying to help them, and I guess I didn't see how unfair it was to you." That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting her to admit it, at least not so soon. For a second, I thought maybe she was finally getting it, that I wasn't the villain in this situation. But I still couldn't shake off the frustration from how everything had gone down. "You didn't just ignore what I wanted," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You sided with them every single time. Like, you just assumed I'd roll over and let them take whatever they wanted." "I know," she said, almost in a whisper. "But we thought, well, you've always been the strong one, Jake. He's never had it easy." That was her excuse every time. Jake wasn't strong. Jake had struggled more. Jake needed more support. It was like they didn't think I had any limits because I was the one who had my life together. "And you think I've had it easy?" I asked, my anger simmering just below the surface. "I'm the one who bought this house. I'm the one who pays the mortgage. I pay for the groceries. I've been carrying all of you, and you think I can just keep doing that forever?" She looked down at her coffee, not saying anything for a few seconds. "I know you've done a lot, more than we could have asked for, but Jake, with the baby on the way..." I cut her off. "This isn't about the baby. This is about respect, and you guys haven't shown me any." She sighed, clearly exhausted by the whole situation, but I wasn't about to let her off with a few tired excuses. "You know, we just thought we were doing the right thing," she finally said. "Jake and Emma, they don't have much." "And whose fault is that?" I shot back. "I didn't ask them to move in. I didn't ask for any of this. They need to figure out their own lives, and you can't keep bailing them out by throwing me under the bus." She nodded, finally seeming to understand, or at least trying to. "We'll figure something out," she said, her voice quieter now. "But please, don't push us out. Not like this." I sat back in my chair, trying to calm down. It wasn't like I wanted to kick them out. I mean, they were my parents. But at the same time, I couldn't keep living in a situation where they didn't respect my boundaries. I'd let too much slide, and now I had to put my foot down. "I don't want to push you out," I said, trying to be as calm as I could. "But things need to change. I can't keep living like this, being treated like I don't matter in my own house. Either things change or yeah, you'll have to find somewhere else to live." She didn't argue, just nodded quietly. "Okay," she said. "We'll figure something out." After that, she left the kitchen, and I was alone again with my thoughts. I wasn't sure if anything was actually going to change, but at least it seemed like they were finally starting to take me seriously. Jake and Emma hadn't shown their faces yet, and I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. But either way, they were on borrowed time. Later that afternoon, Jake finally showed up, and of course, he looked like he'd been brooding over what had happened the night before. He didn't even say hi when he walked into the living room, just sat down across from me with that same pissed-off expression he always had when he didn't get his way. "So, this is how it's gonna be?" he asked, his voice dripping with bitterness. "You're really gonna kick us out?" "I gave you 24 hours, I said, not even looking up from my phone. "If you're still here tomorrow, I'm calling the police." Jake scoffed, shaking his head like I was the bad guy. "We're family. Yeah, and family doesn't take advantage of each other, I shot back. You've had weeks to figure this out. I'm not your fallback plan. He didn't have much to say after that, just sat there for a few minutes before getting up and storming off again. Typical Jake. He was always the type to run when things didn't go his way, and this time was no different. The rest of the day went by quietly. Too quietly, if I'm being honest. I didn't know what Jake and Emma were going to do, but I wasn't about to change my mind. I'd given them a clear deadline and they knew I wasn't bluffing. The next 24 hours were going to decide everything. Update 2. The next morning after all the chaos, I woke up and just laid there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. I knew today was the day. Jake and Emma had 24 hours and now that deadline was ticking away. It was weird though. I wasn't even mad anymore. I'd already accepted what had to happen, and at this point, it was more about following through. When I got up and headed into the kitchen, I noticed right away that the house felt different. Not tense exactly, but just quiet, like the calm before something big happens. No one was in the kitchen, so I figured I'd make myself some breakfast. The fridge was still kind of empty from the last raid Jake and Emma had on the groceries, but I made do with what was left. As I sat there eating, I started thinking about how this whole situation had spiraled out of control so fast. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that things were fine. My parents and I were getting along, I was working, paying the mortgage, covering the groceries, and life was just kind of moving along like normal. Then Jake and Emma show up, and everything went off the rails. It's crazy how fast things can change when people start feeling entitled to stuff they didn't earn. A couple hours later, I heard someone coming down the hallway. It was my dad. He walked in quietly, grabbed a cup of coffee, and sat down at the table across from me. He didn't say anything at first, just took a sip and looked out the window. Finally, he spoke. Jake and Emma are leaving today. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure if he was telling me because they had decided to leave on their own or if he was just reminding me of the deadline. Either way, I nodded and kept eating. They don't have anywhere to go, he continued, his voice low. They're going to stay at a motel for a while until they figure things out. I stopped mid-bite and looked at him. Part of me felt bad, but the bigger part of me knew this was what had to happen. I'd been too nice for too long, and if I didn't put my foot down now, they'd just keep taking advantage. I gave them time, I said, keeping my voice steady. I didn't want it to come to this, but they left me no choice. He didn't argue, didn't try to guilt-trip me, which was surprising. He just nodded and kept drinking his coffee. I think he finally understood that I wasn't going to back down this time. After everything that had happened, there was no going back to how things were. Around noon, Jake and Emma started packing their things. I stayed in my room for most of it, not wanting to get into another argument or hear any more passive-aggressive comments. But after a while, I could hear Jake's voice getting louder from down the hall, so I knew it was only a matter of time before something went down. Sure enough, not long after, Jake knocked on my door. I opened it, and he stood there with that same pissed-off look he'd had since I gave him the eviction notice. "You're really gonna let this happen?" he asked, his voice sharp. "You're just gonna kick us out like this?" I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I gave you 24 hours. I told you what needed to happen." He shook his head, his jaw clenched. "We're family, man. You don't do this to family." I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. "Family doesn't take advantage of each other. I'm not just kicking you out for no reason. You've been freeloading here for weeks without contributing anything. I've been paying the mortgage, the groceries, everything. And instead of being grateful, you tried to take my room and push me out of my own house. I'm not going to let that happen." Jake didn't say anything for a few seconds. I could tell he was mad, but there was nothing left for him to argue. He knew I was right, even if he didn't want to admit it. "So that's it, huh?" he finally muttered. "You're just throwing us out." "I'm giving you the same option I gave you yesterday," I replied. "You can find a way to live somewhere else, or you can stay in the guest room and actually respect me and my space. But if you can't do that, then yeah, you're leaving." Jake glared at me, then turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door and let out a long breath. It was exhausting, but I knew it had to be done. By mid-afternoon, Jake and Emma were gone. I didn't see them leave, and honestly, I didn't want to. I wasn't looking for some emotional goodbye or anything like that. They packed up their stuff, loaded it into their car, and drove off without saying a word to me. The house felt different after they left, quieter, less tense. My parents didn't say much to me that day. I think they were still processing everything that had happened. My mom looked upset, but she didn't say anything about it. Maybe she realized, finally, that I wasn't the one who had caused all this. Jake and Emma had pushed me too far, and this was the result. That evening, my mom knocked on my door. She came in, sat down on the edge of my bed, and just stared at the floor for a while. I could tell she was trying to find the right words. "They're gone," she said softly. I nodded, not saying anything. "I never thought it would get to this point," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you." I looked at her, feeling some of the frustration lift a little. "It's not that I didn't want to help," I explained. "But you guys treated me like I didn't matter, like my needs and my space weren't important." She sighed and nodded. "You're right. We should have seen it sooner." We sat in silence for a few minutes. I could tell she was upset, but at least now she was starting to understand where I was coming from. "I don't want you and Dad to leave," I said, breaking the silence. "But if things don't change, I can't live like this." She nodded again, standing up slowly. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Things will be different, I promise." As she left the room, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The situation with Jake and Emma was over, but there was still work to be done with my parents. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but at least now it felt like they were willing to listen. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The house was quiet, and the tension that had been hanging in the air was gone. It wasn't a perfect solution, but at least now I had my space back. And most importantly, I had my respect. Story 4. I'm a 37-year-old guy who's been divorced for a year. My ex-wife, who's 36, and I have 2 kids, 10 and 7 years old. The kids stay with me for half the month because I have partial custody. Even though they spend a lot of time with me, I still need to pay child support for the days they're with their mom. Since I earn much more than she does, I also pay alimony on top of child support. Our divorce was far from amicable, and currently we are not on speaking terms. The decision to divorce came after numerous arguments in the latter years of our marriage, during which I felt she had become a completely different person. The tipping point was our final argument, where she yelled at me, expressing regret over our marriage. Following that incident, I made the decision to leave and subsequently filed for divorce. After our separation, she made no attempts to reconcile or even reach out to me. It's been a year since the divorce was finalized. About 6 months post-divorce, she began a new relationship, which I learned through mutual acquaintances. Initially, I felt let down by her swift move forward, yet I recognized there was little within my control to change the situation. Consequently, I chose not to address this development with her. Our interactions have been strictly limited to discussions about our children without delving into personal matters. This approach has defined our communication for the past 6 months. Despite feeling slightly wounded by her rapid progression, I acknowledged her continued dedication as a nurturing mother to our children and refrained from actions that might disrupt our family's well-being. However, a recent incident has drastically altered my perception of her character, leading me to question her suitability as a parent. 10 days ago, while on a business trip, an arrangement had been made for her to bring the children to my home on the second day of my absence, aligning with the scheduled custody exchange. Before my business trip, I communicated with my ex-wife about the necessity of her caring for our children for an additional 3 days until my return. She agreed, and I have documented evidence of her consent through screenshots of our conversation. Confident in our arrangement, I proceeded with my trip without concern. However, on the evening of the second day, an unexpected call from my son revealed a distressing oversight. He inquired about my whereabouts, explaining that their mother had dropped them off at my residence, assuming I was present to receive them. Discovering I was away, they found themselves locked out, standing in the cold, having waited at the door for 15 minutes. In response, I directed them to seek temporary shelter at our neighbor's house while I attempted to address the situation. Complicating matters, our neighbors were also absent, leaving my children without immediate refuge in the chilling weather. Our street, mostly vacant due to its novelty and the ongoing occupancy of surrounding homes, offered little solace. The only neighbors, an elderly couple living opposite us, were not at home, mirroring the deserted state of the other houses on our street. In a state of growing panic upon learning that the neighbors were unavailable, I quickly informed my son to hold on for a moment while I attempted to reach his mother. My immediate thought was to ask her to retrieve the children from my residence to prevent them from enduring the cold, especially with the risk of them catching a cold from the snow. Expecting a swift apology and her prompt action to correct the mistake, I was instead met with a response that left me in disbelief and dismay. She bluntly stated that the children were my responsibility, given that it was technically my designated time to care for them. I found myself at a loss for words, struggling to plead with her to reconsider, not for my sake, but for the well-being of our children. Her reaction was to end the call abruptly. With trembling hands, I attempted to reach out via text, hoping she might reconsider if only to ensure the safety and comfort of the children. Her reply was dismissive, citing her plans with her boyfriend and their celebration of their 8-month anniversary as her priority. By this point, more than 20 minutes had elapsed since my initial conversation with my son, cumulatively leaving them exposed to the cold for approximately 35 minutes, with no alternative shelter in sight. I had to call CPS and explain the situation to them. They were there at the location within minutes, and then they took the responsibility to drive my kids from my house to my parents' house, which is a little out of town. My kids are too young to have found their way there on their own, and they didn't know any bus routes or stuff, so they literally couldn't have gone there by themselves. My in-laws aren't alive and had passed away before my ex-wife and I even got married, and any other relatives that I had in the city, they weren't going to take care of my kids until I returned. So my parents' place was my safest bet. I also reported my ex-wife neglecting our kids and putting them in danger on purpose because by the time the cops had discovered them, they'd been sitting on the front steps of my door and were literally using my youngest son's blanket to keep themselves warm. I felt like crap. After they informed me of the state my kids were in, but felt much better after they'd been dropped off at my parents' house. They'd also placed my ex-wife under arrest for negligence within hours of my report, and I went to sleep that day, feeling vindicated as hell, knowing that my kids were safe and sound, and my ex-wife would have hell to pay once I came back. Immediately after ensuring my children were safe, I contacted my attorney to initiate proceedings for full custody, a move that would also terminate child support payments. This decision was driven by a desire to ensure the safety and well-being of my children, and admittedly, to address the negligence displayed by their mother in this incident. In the days following the event, my ex-wife and I did not communicate until I returned from my business trip. My first priority upon return was to visit my children. During our reunion, I apologized for the distress caused by my absence and assured them of my intent to prevent such an occurrence in the future by seeking full custody. This would guarantee their constant safety and presence with me. The reaction from my eldest child to this news was a mixture of relief and happiness, which was unsettling for me. I had always believed their mother to be competent in her role, despite our differences. Her actions during our marriage had convinced me of her dedication to our children's well-being, making this recent lapse all the more surprising and concerning. And even after our divorce, the kids didn't give me any reason to be concerned about how life was for them with their mother. However, after I asked why he was so happy about not having to live with his mom anymore, my son began to hesitate and said that his mom had forbidden him from talking to me about these things. I didn't like the sound of that, so I pressed on, and eventually he told me that for so long he and his brother had been having a really hard time at their mom's place because she was very strict and stringent. All of a sudden, she wouldn't allow them to have any candy or junk while they were there for half of the month, and they were forced to eat the same food every day. The kind of food that my kids referred to as sick food. Not because it's sick and a call away, but because it's what I feed them when they're sick and need to avoid anything that's too rich or heavy for their diet. So they'd be forced to eat tasteless porridge and some form of oats every single day for lunch and dinner. Only on the weekends they'd get something different, but even that would just be toast with some dip. Their mother claimed that this was all for their good health, but I don't understand how a total lack of meat and vegetables in their diet for half of the month was going to make them healthier. I also fail to understand why exactly she'd forbidden them from having candy and junk food. Recognizing the importance of a balanced approach to parenting, I've always believed that occasional indulgences, such as treats, won't adversely affect my children's health. In fact, I argue that this moderation prevents the development of an unhealthy relationship with food, potentially averting future food-related issues. This philosophy extends beyond diet to include social and personal freedoms that contribute to a child's overall well-being and development. During our recent conversations, my children shared insights into their life at their mother's home that raised concerns. They described a restrictive environment where their activities were limited to school attendance with no allowance for social engagements, like having friends over or attending sleepovers. Such opportunities were exclusively available during their stays with me. Additionally, they recounted experiences of shopping trips where their wishes for simple pleasures like toys, books, clothes, or even chicken nuggets were consistently denied. Their mother's focus was solely on her necessities, expecting the children to remain silent and unobtrusive, with any deviation from this expectation met with reprimands. Most troubling was the revelation that they had been instructed not to communicate these experiences to me, explaining their prolonged silence on these matters. This directive from their mother not only restricted their freedom of expression, but also prevented me from fully understanding their living conditions and the challenges they faced while in her care. So finally, I decided to talk to my ex-wife and find out why she had been doing this to our kids. When I called her to confront her, she started off by yelling at me for calling the cops on her and reporting her. But I ignored all of that and asked her about everything that our kids have complained about. None of it added up because I paid her enough in child support to be able to afford the things my kids wanted. And yet they were complaining about never having enough not to eat, not to wear, and not even to play with. So I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she was in between jobs right now and couldn't afford to spend everything on the kids. That still didn't make sense because I was paying her alimony too, so she could maintain her standard of living. I have a decent income, and the alimony combined with the child support is also a substantial amount which she can easily live off without having to compromise our kids' standard of life. I argued with her for a while until she finally snapped and said that it wasn't any of my business what she did with her money, and then disconnected the call. Now that robbed me the wrong way, because this wasn't her money at all. It was my money that I was sending her for my kids. And she was supposed to use the child support for our kids and not for herself. I could tell that she'd been lying. So my lawyer and I decided that along with filing for full custody, we would also sue her for child abuse and neglect, since that was clearly what was happening here. The situation escalated when my ex-wife faced legal repercussions for her decision to leave our children outside in the cold, an action that led to a criminal case against her. This incident, combined with my decision to pursue full custody, underscored the severity of her actions. It's been approximately 1.5 weeks since these events unfolded. Her reaction came only after being formally notified of the legal actions against her. She reached out displaying emotional distress, which I perceived as insincere. Throughout our separation and subsequent interactions, she had not once initiated contact to inquire about the welfare of our children or express a desire to mend our fractured relationship. Her sudden display of concern seemed to be triggered not by a genuine interest in the children's well-being, but rather by the realization that she was at risk of losing both custody and the financial support that accompanied it. During our conversation, she attempted to downplay her actions as a misguided attempt to provoke me, even suggesting a plan to regain custody of the children. However, her appeals and emotional pleas did not sway my resolve. I expressed my lack of trust in her capability to safely and responsibly care for our children, given her recent behavior and the ongoing legal issues. Her argument then shifted towards a plea of financial necessity, attributing her reliance on child support to her current unemployment. This further reinforced my concerns about her motivations for wanting to maintain custody, highlighting the complex interplay of financial dependence, parental responsibility, and the well-being of our children in this dispute. And that confirmed what I already believed, that she wanted custody of our kids for the child support, and not because she actually loved them. I was already disgusted by that, and I was about to hang up when I heard her friend and attorney yelling at her about how she needed to forget about the money from the child support and talk to me about the lawsuit instead. Then my ex-wife switched to talking about that instead and said that I shouldn't be suing her for something, so petty because she already had a lot on her plate. She was already being prosecuted for the incident that took place while I was away, and I was also fighting her for custody. And now on top of all of that, I decided to add more to her troubles with the child protection lawsuit. She said that none of this was fair to her, and claimed that I was doing this on purpose to hurt her because she had moved on in life, and I hadn't. I literally laughed at how delusional that statement was, and then disconnected the call because there was no point in trying to argue with her. I didn't speak to her after that and focused on work and taking care of my kids. I knew already that my kids weren't going to go back to living with their mother at any cost, and I wasn't going to continue the child support payments either. So I've been looking for babysitters for when I'm away at work, and they need to be looked after. As of now, my mom's living with me so she can take care of the kids until I come back from work. Yesterday, I received a call from my mom while I was at work where she told me to hurry back home because my ex-wife was at the door and was refusing to leave without speaking to me. I couldn't just come back home because I was in the middle of a workday and I had a meeting to attend. So I told her to put her on the phone with me. In response to her continuous and distressing behavior, I conveyed to my ex-wife the serious implications of her actions, including the potential need for a restraining order if her erratic behavior persisted. This, I warned, would only exacerbate her current predicaments. However, rather than addressing these concerns, she shifted the conversation to lament how my actions were purportedly devastating her life, appealing for compassion and urging me to retract the lawsuit to alleviate her mental and emotional strain. She outlined the overwhelming pressure she faced from the criminal charges, the impending custody battle, and the lawsuit, all converging within the same time frame. Meanwhile, I had already made arrangements with my workplace to accommodate the need for intermittent absences due to court appearances, ensuring that my professional responsibilities would remain unaffected. Her financial and time constraints, particularly her current unemployment, were highlighted as major obstacles in managing the legal challenges. She argued that her inability to afford legal representation and the requirement to attend court proceedings were unduly burdensome. Yet, when she dismissed my plea for assistance during the incident with our children, citing it as solely my problem, I found myself echoing her words back to her in our current situation. I reminded her that the consequences she now faced were the result of her own actions, thereby making it her responsibility to navigate these challenges, much like she insisted I do in our prior encounter. I'll concede that I said that purely out of spite, but I really think that it was mostly because of how she'd been treating me and the kids ever since the divorce. And I couldn't just let it slide. Every single time she had alimony payments coming in monthly, along with the child support, and in spite of that, she deprived my children of a good home environment and scared them into not telling me anything about it as well. I think I've been totally fair in suing her, as well as trying to get full custody because she'd been selfish, dishonest, and a failure of being a mother. So my being rude to her should have been the least of her concerns. But she just started bawling on the call like a baby and said that I was being horrible to her. She claimed that it was bad enough that she was going to lose custody of her kids. She didn't even think she stood a chance, given the circumstances. But on top of that, I was going to go the extra mile to sue her as well. And she said that it wasn't fair. I've been feeling really guilty about it, even though I did tell her on the call that there was nothing that could be done. Now, AITA for suing my ex-wife for neglecting our kids, even though she was already facing charges and also had a custody case to deal with. Update 1. Hi everyone, 2 days have passed since I posted here, and I have come to the conclusion that there's no reason for me to feel guilty. Thanks to you guys and also my parents, who convinced me that I was doing the right thing. I'm sure now that the funds that I've been sending her for the kids were not being used for them in the slightest, and she was spending it all on herself. She and I don't follow each other on social media, and I'm not exactly in touch with our common friends on a regular basis because of my work. But after I posted here and talked to my parents about this, I decided to discuss this with a couple of my friends as well. The insights shared by my children hinted at a lifestyle incongruent with the financial struggles my ex-wife professed. Observing her frequent absences, particularly during weekends and some nights, raised questions about her true financial situation and priorities. The children's revelation that she left them with neighbors or relatives while she was out further fueled my suspicion. Their hesitance to discuss these matters openly suggested they might have been instructed to keep these details from me, hinting at a deliberate effort to obscure her lifestyle and activities. Recognizing the potential significance of this information, I made the difficult decision to set aside my principles regarding respect for her privacy post-divorce. Initially, I had unfollowed her on social media to honor her autonomy and space, a decision I began to question in light of recent developments. Resorting to indirect methods, I accessed her social media profiles through a friend's account. What I discovered starkly contrasted with the image of financial hardship she presented. Her profiles were laden with photographs showcasing a vibrant social life. Parties at clubs, beach outings, and romantic vacations with her boyfriend, all seeming to involve significant expenditure. These posts contradicted the narrative of financial distress and inability to afford legal representation she communicated to me. This revelation prompted a reevaluation of my understanding of her situation, suggesting that her claims of financial struggle might not fully reflect her actual financial status and lifestyle choices. It looked nothing short of a social media influencer's feed. And I was shocked because from whatever she told me, I thought that she'd been struggling with money and all her bills, but it didn't show on her social media or in her lifestyle at all. My friends told me that they didn't talk about this to me because they didn't think it was their place to say anything or make a comment. And I don't blame them because I think I sort of distanced myself from all my old friends. After the divorce, my ex-wife and I had been dating since college, and all our common friends were from college, so whenever I'd hear from them, I'd be reminded of her, which is why I pushed everyone away. And that clearly didn't work out well for me, but I'm getting back to them now anyway. Now I know that the whole thing was a lie, and she just wanted more and more money out of me. She was also willing to force feed our kids absolute crap and treat them badly just so she could save money instead of spending it on them like a total miser. I don't feel even an ounce of guilt anymore because she totally deserves everything awful that's happening to her right now. She's a horrible human being, and I'm no longer going to let myself feel bad for her anymore. Not after what I found out just now. Update 2. Hi folks. Thank you for all the comments on the post and also the updates. I'm very thankful for it. My ex-wife and I are currently in the middle of the lawsuit, and we have our second hearing scheduled for the day after tomorrow. She gave up on the custody battle pretty quickly and said that she was willing to terminate her parental rights because she couldn't afford to pay her lawyer for all three cases. So now the kids are fully under my custody, and I can finally breathe freely without worrying about what's going to happen. As for the lawsuit, it's pretty much going in my favor. The unexpected contact from my ex-wife's boyfriend added another layer to the unfolding situation. His intention might have been to garner my sympathy by sharing their difficulties, yet it had the opposite effect, heightening my frustrations. This interaction underscored my perception that my ex-wife was prioritizing her relatively new relationship over the well-being and needs of our children, a stance I found deeply troubling. The decision to record the call, made in anticipation of potential threats, proved insightful as it revealed their appeal for me to halt the legal actions. According to him, my ex-wife had been exerting considerable effort to sustain herself, our children, and him through freelance work, a field known for its unpredictability and financial instability. This portrayal of diligence and struggle, however, starkly contrasted with the lifestyle depicted on her social media accounts, which showcased frequent social activities and expensive leisure pursuits. When confronted with the discrepancy between claimed financial hardship and visible expenditure on leisure and trips, he could not provide a satisfactory explanation, only suggesting that these displays were not reflective of their actual financial situation. Furthermore, his admission that my ex-wife was also financially supporting his education, allegedly from her savings, introduced additional complexities to their claim of financial distress. This conversation not only failed to elicit my sympathy, but also reinforced my concerns about my ex-wife's priorities and the authenticity of her claims regarding her financial struggles. The disparity between the narrative presented to me and the evidence of their lifestyle choices has only solidified my resolve to pursue the best interests of our children through the legal proceedings already underway. When I heard that, I hung up and blocked him, because now everything was finally adding up where all the money was going and why my children were being deprived of a good life, even though I'd been paying child support regularly. She's going to have to pay for this in court, and I'll make sure of it. Update 3. Hey guys, long time no see. Thank you for all the concern and for asking about me. I'm doing a lot better now, and so are the kids. They seem very happy here with me and hardly ever talk about their mother now. She lost the case, of course, and now she owes me a ton of money so she can no longer fool around with her boyfriend and her friends, which was weird anyway, because this is a woman in her late 30s with 2 kids, so I don't even know what she was thinking. Blowing all her money at clubs and on vacations. It was ridiculous, but I have nothing to do with her anymore now. Once again, thank you for all the love and support. Story 5. My dad gave my golden brother the family company that I built for years and left me with scraps. So I left and watched them collapse without me, but now they are begging. Hey Reddit, you ever have a job where your boss treats you like you're 12 years old doing chores for allowance, except the boss is your own dad? Yeah, that was my life for way too long. I, 32 male, was busting my back in the family business while he acted like I was just the hired help with the same last name. It finally hit a point where I'd had enough, so I made a move that ended up flipping everything upside down. And let's just say, they didn't see it coming. So my old man owns a business. Blue-collar stuff. Not glamorous, but it pays well enough that he can act like he's some kind of business messiah in our small town. Built it from nothing, he says every time someone compliments the shop, like he didn't have me busting my back while he sat in the office pretending to understand spreadsheets. Now here's the kicker. My older brother is the second coming of Christ in his eyes, got a business degree from a May college, and suddenly he's the chosen one. I'm not exaggerating. The guy got a C+ in econ once, and my dad still framed the exam like it was a Medal of Honor. Meanwhile, I've been in the field since I was 17, doing the actual work, grinding, fixing, troubleshooting messes other guys walked away from. And you know what I get? Thanks, sport. No stake, no say. Just a pat on the head and back to the grind. Dad's been grooming my brother to take over since day one. Not even subtle. I was literally in the room when he told me. And I quote, "You'll never run this place. You're better with tools, not decisions. Dead serious. Like I'm a caveman with a hammer, and he's the only guy with enough brain cells to check email." It didn't even sting at that point. I just stared at him. Like, wow. At least pretend to respect me. I asked if there was any room for me in the business once he retires. You know, something. A percentage, a piece. I didn't even ask for half, just something to show I mattered. And he gives me this smug little nod and goes, "You'll get something after I'm gone." What a guy. Basically told me to wait for him to die and maybe, he'll leave me a few scraps in the will. Gee, thanks, Pops. Can't wait to inherit a broken forklift and some rusty tools after you croak. My brother sat there in the meeting with his arms crossed, smirking like he just won the lottery. Didn't say a word. Didn't even pretend to back me up. Of course not. He's the golden child. Has been since birth. Got the bigger bedroom with his own TV, the newer bike every 2 years like clockwork, less chores, lighter punishments. You name it. Dude could sneeze and get praised for spreading innovation. I remember one time he accidentally left the garage open overnight and raccoons got into everything. My dad blamed me for not checking it behind him. Another time, he crashed Dad's pickup truck into a tree in the driveway, and somehow I got yelled at for not warning him about the road being slippery. Like, what was I supposed to do? Salt the whole neighborhood? That kind of golden. Meanwhile, me? I was labeled the impulsive one because I dropped out of college for a year. Not to party or mess around, I got a solid job fixing HVAC systems and actually learned real skills. Best hands-on experience I've ever had. But to my dad, that move was like committing treason. One gap year, and I'm a wild card for life. Every conversation after that came with some passive-aggressive comment about finishing what you start or sticking to the plan. Meanwhile, my brother got caught straight up plagiarizing an entire essay in college, copy-pasted from some online archive, and my dad spun it into entrepreneurial thinking because he's resourceful under pressure. I swear if he burned the house down, my dad would have said it was an experiment in fire safety. I wasn't the kid who rebelled. I was the kid who got ignored unless something broke, and then suddenly I was the only one who knew how to fix it. My brother got celebrated for showing up. I had to bleed just to get a good job once a year. That meeting was just the latest slap in the face. My dad laid out his grand succession plan, complete with a new title and shiny office for my brother. I asked, barely asked, if there was a place for me in that plan. Not even half the business, just a little piece, a stake. Something to show I wasn't just a glorified wrench monkey. And what did I get? You'll get something after I'm gone. So yeah, after that little heart-to-heart about how I was basically a glorified temp worker in my own family's company, I hit my limit. Went home, sat in my car for like half an hour just staring at the dash, thinking about how stupid I was for giving this place so many years. I've carried that shop through all kinds of crap. Deadlines, broken machines, lazy hires, you name it. I was the guy they called when stuff hit the fan. And all I've gotten back is attitude and second-place treatment. The next morning, I typed up a 2 weeks notice. No drama, no rant, just a clean, I'm done. Handed it to my dad during lunch like I was dropping off his dry cleaning. He glanced at it and said, "Is this about what I said yesterday?" I said, "Nah, just time to move on." And he hits me with, "All right, good luck, but you won't last without me and your brother." I actually smiled. That's the part that got me. He really believed that. Like I was going to crash and burn the second I didn't have him micromanaging my every move or my brother messing things up beside me. No, are you sure? No, let's talk this through. Find just a weird little ego trip and right back to chewing his sandwich. That told me everything I needed to know. I was never meant to be anything more than the backup wrench in the drawer. Pulled out when things got messy, ignored the rest of the time. But the fact that he thought I couldn't survive without them? Man, that was almost funnier than it was insulting. Anyways, I still showed up for work like normal, even though every second felt like a joke. My brother barely said 2 words to me all week, acted like I was invisible. I think he figured I'd come crawling back or something. Then a few days later, Jared, the guy who represents our biggest client, comes by asking if I can handle a project next week. I tell him, can't. I won't be here. He gives me this confused look and goes, "Wait, what?" So I explain I'm leaving. Don't give details. Just say it's personal. I don't want to sound bitter, even though I was ready to scream into a pillow every night. He looks stunned. He's like, "You're the only guy we ask for." Which, yeah, I knew that. They always requested me. Not my brother. Not the guy with the degree. Me. Because I actually got stuff done. He asked if I had another job lined up. I told him no, not yet. And it was true. I figured I'd freelance for a bit or just take a breather. Not a lot of companies need someone with my skill set, but I was willing to figure it out. And that should have been the end of it. Me quietly bowing out, finding something else, moving on. But turns out, someone else had bigger plans for me. The morning after, I walk into the shop and my dad's sitting at his desk like nothing happened. Doesn't even look up. I say morning, and he goes, "You still coming in on time even after quitting?" That's new. Yeah, real classy. Dude acts like I used to roll in 3 hours late, when I've been the one unlocking the damn place half the time because he couldn't get out of bed before 9. And yeah, I was still showing up. Not for him. Not for the paycheck, just because I wanted to walk out the right way. No loose ends, No, he left us hanging stories. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of saying I ghosted or bailed. I'd already mentally pieced out. I was just tying up the last few knots before I left the mess behind. So I head to the floor, and guess what? Half the morning crew is standing around because the delivery truck didn't get loaded last night. My brother was supposed to handle it since I'm stepping back. He didn't, and now the order's late and the client's already pissed. So who ends up jumping in to fix it? Yep, me. Again. And while I'm hauling pallets to save their rep from collapsing faster than Dad's hairline, guess who walks in holding a cold brew and acting like a manager? Let's make sure this doesn't happen again, my brother says. No, sorry. No, thanks for covering. Just that smug, I watched a TED Talk tone he uses when he's trying to sound like a leader. I stare at him. Yeah, maybe try loading it next time instead of delegating to the void. He blinks, doesn't respond, just turns around and walks off to review numbers, which I'm 100% sure means scrolling LinkedIn and pretending he's networking. Then, this is gold, around lunch, my dad finally calls me into his office. Big man wants to chat. So I sit down, arms crossed, already bracing for a guilt trip. He opens with, "So, I thought about your decision to leave, and I'm willing to raise your pay." I raise an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, what's the offer?" $1.50 more an hour, he says. Dead serious. Leans back like he just offered me stock in Tesla. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. That's what you think I'm worth? After all these years? He frowns like I just insulted him. It's a good rate. Most people your age aren't making that kind of money. Brother, I'm not most people. I'm the one your biggest client specifically asks for. I'm the one who trained half your staff. I'm the one who made you look like a genius while you sat in your office watching old car restoration videos and pretending to do payroll. I didn't say all that, obviously. Just stood up, said I'll pass, and walked out. Next day, chaos. Jared shows up around 10 a.m., already looking annoyed. I guess he was told the install was on track. Except it wasn't. Brother Dearest gave him a fake update because he didn't want to admit he forgot to order the mounting hardware. Real pro stuff. Jared spots me across the floor and beelines over. Hey, can you explain why nothing's ready for the Vantry job? I blink. You'll have to ask the new manager. I'm just a spectator now. He looks at me, then looks over at my brother trying to Google industrial mount brackets on his phone like nobody's watching. So, you're really leaving? Jared asks, quieter. Yeah, Friday's my last day. He nods slowly. Where to? I shake my head. No clue. Might take a break. That man paused like he just found out his dentist was quitting mid-root canal. You're the only reason we kept the contract this long. Just saying. That felt good. Not even gonna lie. And that's when the twist came. Jared's boss, never met him before, shows up. Real serious guy. Clean suit, clipboard, the whole vibe. Spends 10 minutes watching the floor, checking equipment, then pulls me aside. Mind if I ask you a question? He says. Sure. You ever think about running your own crew? I blink. Like, freelance? Number I mean full-time, in-house. We've been thinking of internalizing this operation, but we've had trouble finding someone who knows the work and can manage people. You come highly recommended. I just stood there, jaw probably on the floor. I hadn't even looked for a job, and this guy's offering me one on the spot. He tells me to think about it. Gives me a rough figure. Spoiler. It's more than I've ever made in my life. Plus office, benefits, equipment budget, the works. I didn't say yes. Not yet. Still had 2 more days on the clock, and I wasn't going to give my dad the satisfaction of saying I quit early. But oh man, my brain was already packing my mental boxes. That afternoon, my dad walks by the loading area and sees me talking to Jared and his boss. Doesn't ask what's up. Doesn't even pause. Just gives me a look like I'm wasting company time chatting. I should have said something. I should have told him, that guy's offering me a real future while you're still handing out nickels and calling it a raise. But nah, I just smiled. Let him be ignorant. He thinks I'm just some angry quitter. In reality, I'm the guy his clients want to hire away. That night, I got home, cracked open a soda, and stared at my phone for like an hour. Didn't even open apps. Just sat there, thinking. They don't know it yet, but they're about to feel what it's like when the spare son walks away. And this time, I'm not coming back. So Friday rolled around, my official last day. I came in early, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I had one last thing to finish. The Vantry order was still a mess, and I was the only person who even knew where half the supplies were. Could have let it crash and burn, but I had one rule. If my name's attached, it doesn't go out half done. I finish clean so nobody gets to say I was the problem. Of course, my dad didn't say a word. Not even a thanks, not a handshake, not even a fake good luck. He just walked past me in the morning like I was air and told the receptionist to get coffee for the team, which apparently didn't include me anymore. Not that I was expecting anything different. At this point, if the building was on fire and I was holding the extinguisher, he'd still hand it to my brother and tell me to step aside. My brother, by the way, spent the entire day fumbling through a phone call with another client, pretending he knew what they were talking about. I overheard him telling them the install time would probably be standard. What does that even mean? Standard like last month's job that took 3 days longer because he forgot to measure the bracket space? Or standard like he makes up numbers and hopes no one notices? Anyway, around noon, Jared came by. This time with his boss again. No clipboard today. Just a folder and a smile. Got a minute? He asked. I wiped my hands on a towel, nodded, and followed him out to the lot. His boss handed me the offer in writing. 3-year contract. Salary that almost made me laugh out loud. Bonus structure. Benefits. My own budget. An office. Yes, again, with the mini fridge. They even added a line for me to approve the hiring of 2 techs under me. I didn't hesitate. Signed right there on the hood of my truck. Not a single pause. Not a single, but what about my family? Or, is this fair to my dad? They made it crystal clear. I was disposable to them. So now they get to see what happens when the extra walks away with the client that kept their business floating. And don't get it twisted. I didn't steal anyone. Jared came to me. They needed someone who knew what they were doing. I just happened to be the only one who fit that bill. I walked back inside with my signed copy still in my hand. Didn't hide it. Didn't flaunt it either. Just put it in my locker with the rest of my stuff. Then I did the pettiest thing I've ever done, and I don't even feel bad about it. I went to the break room and cleared out my locker, took my tools, my coffee mug, my gloves, everything. But I left the plaque they gave me 5 years ago that said Employee of the Quarter, sitting right on top of my brother's desk. He didn't even earn one, ever. Just thought it'd look good there now that he's in charge. And right before I walked out, my dad finally comes over. No greeting, just that annoyed, tight-jawed look he does when he realizes he can't fix something with fake authority. So you're really doing this? He says, arms crossed. I blink at him. Doing what exactly? You know what I mean. Leaving. Taking the client. I smiled. I didn't take anything. They offered. You said I wasn't leadership material. They disagreed. He opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. You made your choice, Dad. You wanted one son to run the place and one to follow orders. Looks like the follower got promoted elsewhere. And then I walked out. Didn't wait for a response. Didn't care. By Monday, I was in my new workspace. Air conditioning. My name on a door. Brand new tools. Assigned parking. The 2 guys I hired actually showed up on time and asked me for instructions without rolling their eyes or acting like they knew better. It was weird. Being respected. Jared came in midweek just to check in. He shook my hand and said, "Glad we got you." I just nodded and said, "You got the best part of that deal, trust me." Meanwhile, I start hearing little things through the grapevine. One of the guys from the old shop texted me, "Yo, they're scrambling now. Can't even get the wiring right without you." Another one messaged, "Your brother told a client we could wing it, on a 5-figure installation." And my dad tried to call Jared's boss to clear the air. Apparently blamed me for stirring the pot. The guy hung up on him halfway through the call. They're flailing. And I'm over here with my feet up, reviewing equipment orders like I'm running the place. Because now, I am. Revenge didn't need yelling or lawsuits or drama. I just walked out, took the piece they never valued, and made it the one thing they couldn't replace. And no, I don't feel bad. They made the rules. I just learned how to play them better. So, less than a week into my new gig, I get a random LinkedIn message. From Randy. He's one of the techs at my dad's place. Not someone I'd ever expect to hear from unless a forklift ran over his foot or something. His message just says, "Bro, you would not believe what's happening over here." I reply with, "Try me." 10 minutes later, he sends a wall of texts. Turns out 2 more clients pulled out. Not because of me, don't get it twisted, but because the golden boy forgot to send a follow-up quote to one of them and completely misread the specs for another job. They showed up with the wrong equipment. The client literally threw them off the lot. Oh, and that late shipment from last week? The Vantry one I bailed them out on before I left? They delivered it without the bracket mounts because my brother assumed the client would already have those installed. Brother, it's your company's job to install them. That's the whole deal. They had to comp the job. Lost money. And apparently, that triggered one of their backup clients to start looking elsewhere, just in case. The best part? My dad tried to act like I sabotaged something, told the crew someone must have tampered with the order files before leaving. Real detective work, Sherlock. Nope. I didn't touch a thing. Your golden boy just doesn't know how to click a checklist. Meanwhile, at my new job, heaven. I'm not even exaggerating. My office chair leans back. The AC works. The coffee's free and doesn't taste like burnt tires. I got two guys under me, Sam and Hector, who actually listen, and one of them used to work in a competitor firm. We're flying through our first project so fast, the client bumped our deadline up, not back. They were that impressed. So while I'm out here racking up W's, my dad's business is bleeding out. And then the wildest thing happened. On Friday, I get a call from a number I don't recognize. Normally, I don't answer unknowns, but I was between tasks and feeling spicy. It's my uncle, Dad's older brother, the one who co-signed the business loan years ago when they expanded. He's calm, but I can tell something's off. He goes, "Hey, I heard what happened with you leaving. Just wanted to say, good move." I blink. "Wait, what?" He says, "Your dad never gave you credit for anything. It was obvious to all of us." Brother, this is the first time anyone in the family has ever said that out loud. He tells me he got looped into a meeting earlier that week where my dad basically tried to beg for help, financial help. Says they're down 3 clients and cash flow's disrupted. In normal human speak, they're broke. Uncle said he told them flat out, "This is what happens when you build an entire operation around one kid and ignore the one doing the work." Mic drop. He even asked if I needed any help setting up additional services on my side, like maybe opening a secondary location down the line. Total 180, guy was ready to back me now. I thanked him and told him I was good for now. But yeah, that call stuck with me. Anyway, back to the firestorm. That Monday, I get another message. This time from Lena, the front desk girl from my dad's company. She's quitting, wants to know if I'm hiring. Apparently, my brother tried to shift blame for one of the client losses onto her. She found out he told the client she forgot to confirm the delivery when he's the one who deleted the email thread by accident. He even tried to offer her a write-up to make it go away. So now they're down another employee. And then came the plot twist of all plot twists. I get a text from Jared. He sends me a screenshot. It's an email from my dad to Jared's boss. And it's wild. He accuses me of poaching the client, says I, used inside access to manipulate client relationships, and finishes it off by demanding compensation for loss of revenue due to employee misconduct. I nearly dropped my phone laughing. First off, I didn't poach Jack. They came to me. Second, nothing was underhanded, unless being better at your job than your replacement is a crime now. I called Jared immediately. He picks up laughing. "Dude, don't worry. My boss read that, shook his head, and flagged it. You're solid." I said, "Did he actually write that with a straight face?" "Apparently. He even CC'd your brother, like that made it more legit." Then Jared hit me with the kicker. My boss replied with one sentence, "We do not negotiate with incompetence." I'm not making that up. It was glorious. By Wednesday, Randy tells me they've officially started layoffs. Quiet ones, trying not to trigger panic. First 2 guys gone were from the install team. One of them was the guy who trained my brother. The irony's poetic. I should feel something, right? Sadness, maybe? Guilt? Nope. Not a drop. They made me feel small, invisible, replaceable. Now they're the ones getting replaced, and I haven't even broken a sweat. It didn't just stop there, the new kept raining on, and it didn't trickle in. It dropped like a damn safe. I was working through a supply order when Jared knocks on my office door with his phone in his hand. He's got this half grin like he just read something juicy. "You're gonna want to see this," he says. He hands me his phone. It's a forwarded email chain between a local subcontractor and a few clients that used to work with my dad's company. The subcontractor CC'd my dad and brother, and now their firm's getting reported for fraud. Apparently, my genius brother had been sending out updated invoices with adjusted rates, only they weren't approved rates. He marked up some jobs by 20 to 30% and padded the hours to make up for losses after I left. But he never told the clients, never got signatures, nothing. And guess what? One of those clients was a city municipality job. Government contract. Yeah, real smart. They were now being investigated for billing fraud on public projects. I hand the phone back and just start laughing. Loud. Probably louder than I should have. Jared just sits down and goes, "Dude, this might go nuclear." Turns out one of the clients hired a legal team to audit every invoice from the last 12 months. They're trying to figure out how deep the overcharging goes. And since most of it happened after I left, it's all Golden Boy's doing. But that's not even the worst of it. Later that afternoon, I get a call from Adam, the new front desk guy from back at the shop. He sounds freaked out. He tells me that the IRS showed up that morning. Like full-on visit. Badges, documents, questions. They wanted to speak to my dad about inconsistent financial reporting. I almost dropped my phone. Apparently, my dad had been doing more than just mismanaging money. He was funneling payments between shell accounts, some under my mom's name. She passed away 6 years ago, by the way. And delaying payroll taxes so long it triggered a full-blown audit. And my brother? According to Adam, he tried to play it cool. Said, "Oh, this is probably just a routine check." Yeah, routine IRS visits come with 2 agents, a lawyer, and a clipboard thick enough to kill a raccoon. Adam said he quit on the spot, didn't even log out of his email. Just grabbed his stuff and walked out while my dad was mid-sentence. And here's the twist that really iced the cake. They tried to pin it on me. Yep. Apparently, my dad told the IRS I was the one who set up the secondary vendor accounts, which is insane, because I never even had access to that side of the books. I was on the floor doing real work, not clicking around QuickBooks like a shady accountant with a Red Bull addiction. I got a heads up from a mutual connection, a guy who used to do security installations with us. He overheard my dad ranting that I was sabotaging the company and leaked information to competitors. This man, the same one who told me I was just the muscle. Now suddenly I'm a criminal mastermind? That night, I got a call from Jared's boss. He assured me their legal team already shut down any whispers about me being involved. "They're throwing darts blindfolded," he said. "You're fine. They're desperate. Damn right they are." By the end of that week, 3 more former clients had filed formal complaints against my dad's company. And my brother? He tried to give a statement on behalf of the company. I found the clip on Facebook. 35 seconds of him stuttering through corporate buzzwords while dodging every actual question. One lady in the comments wrote, "Why does this dude blink like he's being held hostage?" I laughed so hard I almost fell off the couch. And me? I was eating takeout in a clean office with zero stress while watching them burn the business down like they were speed-running financial ruin. No pity, no guilt. They picked their favorite son, put him in charge, let him screw it all up. Now they're paying the price. Literally. And best believe, I'm not done watching. Because the next thing was them coming at my office door. It started with a knock on the glass. I was in my office going through supply chain estimates for the quarter, sipping on a coffee that didn't taste like it was filtered through regret. I looked up, and there they were. My dad and my brother standing just outside the main doors of my building, wearing that weird mix of trying to look professional and barely holding it together. I didn't move. Watched them through the glass like 2 stray dogs who wandered into a steakhouse. My brother looked fidgety, sweating even though it was barely 70 out. My dad had that fake calm face, the one he used whenever he was about to lie through his teeth. I took another sip. Then I got up, buzzed them in through reception, and leaned back in my chair like I wasn't about to watch a live episode of their downfall. They stepped in, awkward like middle school kids walking into the wrong classroom. "Nice place," my dad said, eyes scanning the room. I didn't respond, just stared. Let the silence do the work. "We were hoping we could talk," he added, clearing his throat. "Sit," I said, motioning to the chairs across from my desk. They sat. It was quiet for a second. Then my brother spoke first, of course. "Look, we know things got out of hand. Mistakes were made, but we're trying to move forward. Clean slate." I almost laughed. "Mistakes?" I leaned forward. "You mean the fraud investigation? The fake invoices? The shell accounts? Or the part where you tried to blame me for it?" My dad winced. My brother flinched. "All right," Dad said, holding up a hand. "I'll admit, we were in a bad spot, but we thought we could manage it, and then things escalated, faster than expected." I stared at him. This man, who once told me to stay in my lane, who said I wasn't fit to lead, now sitting across from me, coat wrinkled, face pale, eyes begging. "You're not managing anything," I said. "Your company's under investigation, your accounts are frozen, your equipment's outdated, and every decent worker you had is either here or gone." Silence. "We're trying to avoid bankruptcy," my brother finally said. "We were hoping maybe you'd consider helping us out." That's when I smiled. A slow, steady, not-so-nice smile. "Help how?" My dad straightened up like he rehearsed this. "We're willing to offer you a share of the company. Real partnership. Even controlling interest if you want." My jaw tightened. Not because I was angry, but because I was holding back a laugh. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You're offering me control over a business that's weeks away from being shut down. That's being investigated for fraud. That's hemorrhaging clients. And now, after everything, you want to hand me the wheel and act like it's a gift? My brother squirmed in his chair. You're our only shot, he muttered. I let that hang for a second. You remember what you said to me? I asked my dad. When I asked for a stake in the company a year ago? He looked down. You said I'd get something after you died, I said. So what's changed? You still alive, right? Don't be petty, my dad snapped, finally showing some fire. This is serious. I stood up slowly, walked to the window, looked out over the parking lot, the clean lines, the organized crew working below. My operation. My rules. You called me selfish, I said quietly. Told me I wasn't leadership material. You gave the golden child the kingdom and told me to sweep the floors. You treated me like a backup plan, and now that the plan failed, you come running to the guy you ignored? No one responded. I turned back to them. My dad's face was red now. My brother looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. You two made this mess, I said. And now you're asking the guy you discarded to fix it. You don't have to fix it, my brother said quickly. We just need help stabilizing. A loan, maybe a temporary contract, or just referrals. I held up a hand. Stop. They both shut up. You came here hoping I'd save you. And I could. I have the money, the resources, the network. I could throw you a line and maybe you'd stay afloat. Their eyes lit up for a second. But I won't. Their faces dropped like bricks. You don't deserve it, I said. You didn't just push me out. You tried to erase me. Then when everything fell apart, you blamed me. Like some bitter Hail Mary. You tried to destroy me, and now you want me to rebuild you? I stepped forward, hands in my pockets. You want a clean slate? Get in line. That's not how it works anymore. You burned that bridge with gasoline and danced on the ashes. My dad opened his mouth. I didn't let him speak. I didn't build this place to throw lifelines to people who buried me. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and stared them down. You can leave now. They sat there for a second, stunned. Then they stood up slowly. No fight, no argument, just shame. My brother looked at me one last time. You really won't help us? I stared right at him. I did help, I said, by leaving. And with that, they walked out. No handshake, no goodbye. Just the soft click of the glass door closing behind them. I sat there for a while after. Not thinking, not celebrating, just sitting. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about finally being in a place where I didn't need them to acknowledge my worth, because I built something without them. And that's what killed them most. The black sheep had become the wolf. And now, I run the damn pack. Story 6. This story is titled, We're Taking Your Office Space, Dad said over dinner. I nodded and said, okay, I'll clear it out tomorrow. The next morning, I found a new apartment without telling them. And now they are calling me nonstop because they cannot afford to live without my help. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. We're taking your office space, my old man announced over dinner last night. Not asked, told. I was halfway through my burger when he dropped it like he was commenting on the fucking weather. My stomach knotted up, but I forced this pathetic fake smile and muttered, fine, whatever, I'll clear it out tomorrow. In my head, though, I was thinking, are you serious with this shit again? See, I, 26 male, still living at home after getting my CS degree because Bay Area rent is insane, and I've been trying to build up my web development business. That office space wasn't just a room. It was the converted garage where I've been working 60-hour weeks for the past 3 years, landing clients and building my portfolio while paying $850 a month rent to my parents, plus utilities, plus groceries half the time. My dickhead brother Ethan, 19 male, sat across from me with his smug little smirk, golden child extraordinaire, failed out of community college twice, but somehow mom and dad still think the sun shines out of his ass. He wanted my workspace for his streaming career, which consists of him playing Valorant badly for an audience of maybe 12 people. Ethan needs the space for his equipment, Mom chimed in, not even looking up from her phone. His followers are really growing, and this could be his big break. Yeah, all 38 of them. Meanwhile, I just landed a $5,000 contract last month that helped pay for the new water heater when theirs crapped out during Christmas. Not that anyone bothered to say thanks. Plus, Dad added through a mouthful of fries, your brother needs privacy. The living room isn't cutting it. Privacy. For the kid who hadn't contributed a single fucking dollar to this household. Meanwhile, I've been the one re-shingling the roof last summer, fixing mom's car when it broke down, and upgrading the home network when dad kept bitching about his Netflix buffering. I've dumped at least $9,000 into this place over the past year, and they act like I'm some random tenant they're doing a favor. Ethan kept grinning wider, like he'd won something. That's how it's always been. Him taking, me giving. Since we were kids, he was the special one who needed extra help, extra attention, extra everything. When I made honor roll, they nodded. When he passed a class with a C minus, they took him out for ice cream. I stabbed at my fries, ketchup splattering on the tablecloth. Mom frowned at the mess, but honestly, I was too pissed to care. The garage was my space, my sanctuary from their bullshit. But clearly, I wasn't even entitled to that. You can set up in the basement, Dad offered, like he was being generous. The fucking basement. With its half-finished walls, concrete floor, and that persistent mildew smell. Where the Wi-Fi barely reaches and the ceiling is so low I have to hunch. Where they store all their crap. But I just nodded because what else could I do? I've spent my whole life being reasonable while they catered to Ethan's every whim. That night, I sat in my garage office, staring at the setup I'd built. The custom desk I'd made from reclaimed wood, the perfect cable management, the sound absorption panels I'd installed. 3 years of building my space, my business. And they were giving it to a teenager who couldn't even be bothered to wash his own dishes. Something inside me just snapped. I should probably back up and explain the Ethan situation, because it's key to understanding why this desk thing hit me so hard. From day one, this kid has been treated like he's made of glass. When we were growing up, if I got a B+, Dad would ask why it wasn't an A. If Ethan got a C-, they'd celebrate like he'd won a Nobel Prize. He's just wired differently, Mom would say. He needs more support. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one who had his shit together. Translation? The kid they didn't have to worry about, so they didn't. When I was 16, I saved for 6 months to buy my first laptop. Ethan got the newest iPhone for his 12th birthday because all his friends had one. I busted my ass for a scholarship to state. Ethan flunked out of community college, and they blamed his professors for not understanding his learning style, then paid for him to try again at a different school, which he also flunked out of. When I moved back home after graduation, the deal was I'd pay rent and stay until I got established. Reasonable. But somehow I also became the in-house tech support, handyman, and emergency fund. Last year, the furnace died during the coldest week of January. Repair bill, $2,700. Guess whose savings paid for it? Not my parents, who both work decent jobs. Definitely not Ethan, who was between opportunities. Me, with the promise they'd pay me back soon. Still waiting on that. 3 months ago, Dad's car needed a new transmission. $1,800 from my client funds. Last summer, I spent 2 weeks replacing the deck that was rotting through, paid for the materials, did the labor, while Ethan played video games inside. When they had friends over to see the new deck, Dad joked, "Yeah, got it done for cheap." Never mentioned I built the damn thing. Every time I try to bring this stuff up, Mom gets teary and Dad gets defensive. Family helps family, he'll say. But it only ever seems to go one direction. So yeah, the garage workspace meant a lot to me. It was the one place in this house that was mine, where I built something from nothing. And now they were handing it to Ethan, because his streaming career might take off someday. That night, I couldn't sleep. Just lay there cataloging every time they'd chosen him over me. Every time they'd taken from me to give to him. Every time I'd swallowed my anger and played along. Not anymore. The next morning, I skipped the usual family breakfast. Couldn't stand to look at Ethan's smug face or listen to Mom talk about how they'd redecorate my workspace for him. Instead, I sat in my car in the driveway, scrolling apartment listings. I'd been saving for my own place, but the way Bay Area rent is, I figured I needed at least another year. But fuck it. I'd live on ramen if I had to. Found a studio in Oakland, 500 square feet, dated kitchen, but it had a decent-sized alcove perfect for my desk setup. $1,850 a month, which was actually below market for anything not actively on fire. The landlord wanted first, last, and security, $5,550 up front. I had $8,200 saved. It would be tight, but doable. I fired off an email with my credit score and income verification from my business. Got a response within an hour. Available now. Can you come see it this afternoon? Hell yes, I could. The place was exactly as advertised. Small, slightly worn around the edges, but clean. Big windows, no mildew smell, no Ethan, no parents acting like every dollar I earned belonged to the family fund, which somehow always got spent on whatever Ethan wanted. I'll take it, I told the landlord. A chill older lady named Janet who said she preferred renting to quiet professionals over party kids. Signed the paperwork on the spot, paid the deposit, got the keys. Holy shit, just like that, I had my escape plan. Driving home, I felt this weird mix of triumph and fury. I should have done this years ago. Instead, I'd been bankrolling a family that saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit. Well, resources can dry up. I didn't tell them about the apartment. Instead, when mom texted asking if I could pick up groceries on the way home, I wrote back, sure, like nothing had changed. But I didn't buy the usual $200 worth, just milk and bread, the bare minimum. Where's the rest? She asked when I walked in with one sad little bag. Budget's tight this month, I said, shrugging. Figured we could all chip in. The look on her face, like I'd suggested we start eating the furniture. But you always get the groceries on Tuesdays. Yeah, well, things change. Dad was in the garage, my garage, measuring for Ethan's new streaming desk they were planning to buy. A $600 gaming setup they'd somehow find money for, despite claiming poverty whenever I mentioned the $4,500 they owed me. Hey, the printer's jammed again, he called out when he saw me. Can you take a look? Normally, I'd drop everything to fix it. 20 minutes of my life to extract whatever paper Ethan had crammed in there wrong. Not today. Can't, I said. Client deadline. Can it wait? Your mother needs to print some work stuff. Nope. Bills to pay. I walked past him to my soon-to-be ex-office and started casually sorting through my things. Not packing, not obviously, but taking inventory. That night, the printer remained jammed. Mom had to go to Kinko's. Dad grumbled about family responsibilities. I just worked on my laptop, wireless headphones on, a small smile playing at my lips. The next day, Ethan cornered me in the kitchen. Dude, can you drive me to Brandon's? My car's making that noise again. His car. Actually, my old Honda that I'd fixed up and stupidly sold to him for half its value when he got his license, which he hadn't maintained once. Take the bus, I said, not looking up from my coffee. The bus? It's like 5 miles. Sounds like a personal problem. He stormed off to whine to Mom. 10 minutes later, she appeared. That disappointed look she'd perfected. Ryan, your brother needs a ride. It would only take 20 minutes. I've got work. You're just sitting there drinking coffee. Yeah, on my break. From work. That pays my bills. And yours, apparently. Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to pushback from me. Small rebellions. But man, they felt good. By day 3 of Operation Take Back My Life, cracks were showing in the family system. The lawn, which I'd mowed every Sunday since high school, was getting shaggy. The dishes were piling up in the sink. Usually I loaded the dishwasher without being asked. The Wi-Fi kept dropping because I hadn't reset the router in the usual spots where it got glitchy. Little things. Things they'd taken for granted that I would handle. Dad finally approached me Thursday night, awkwardly hovering in my doorway. So, the lawn's getting kind of out of control. I glanced up from my laptop. Yep, sure is. I figured you were going to mow it last weekend. Nah. A long pause. Are you going to mow it this weekend? Wasn't planning on it. Back to my screen. He shifted uncomfortably. Is something wrong, Ryan? You seem off lately. That was Rich. 3 years of using me as their personal handyman, ATM, and emotional support human, and now he notices something's off. Just busy with work, I said blandly. Well, we're family. We all need to pitch in. I finally looked up at him, letting the words hang there. We all need to pitch in. When was the last time Ethan had pitched in with anything? When had Dad last fixed something instead of waiting for me to do it? Sure, I said finally. I'll add it to the list. I didn't specify what list, but I was definitely keeping score. The next morning, I woke up to raised voices downstairs. Peeked over the banister to see Ethan and Dad arguing about the yard. Why do I have to do it? That's Ryan's job. Your brother's busy. Just do it this once. But I have a stream scheduled. My followers are expecting me. All 38 of them, I thought. Then reschedule it. Jesus Christ, Ethan. It's just lawn mowing. It was like watching a nature documentary. The parasitic relationship disturbed, the host organism finally pushing back against the parasite. Fascinating. I slipped back to my room, started packing another box. I'd been slowly moving my valuables out each day while they were busy arguing about chores. The studio apartment was gradually filling up with my stuff, but the real bombshell dropped that afternoon. I was on a client call when Dad knocked on my door, his face a weird mix of defensive and guilty. Hey, quick thing, he said when I finished. I sold your workbench. Guy's picking it up tomorrow. Got $300 for it. My custom workbench. The one I'd built from scratch, with the perfect height for my ergonomic setup, the built-in cable management, The adjustable monitor arms. You sold my property without asking me? My voice was dangerously calm. Well, Ethan needs a proper streaming desk. And since you're moving to the basement anyway, so you just decided my stuff was yours to sell. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I figured you'd be fine with it. It's for your brother's career. His career, I repeated flatly. Right. Look, we'll split it with you. You can have $100, a third, of the money, for my bench, that I built, with my own hands and my own money. Keep it, I said, turning back to my computer. Consider it my investment in the bank of Ethan. Seems to be the only place my money goes around here anyway. He left, confused, but relieved I hadn't pushed back harder. As soon as the door closed, I booked a U-Haul for Saturday morning. By Friday, I'd moved about 70% of my belongings to the new apartment. Nothing obvious. TV still in place, bed still made, but clothes, important documents, my good computing equipment, all quietly relocated while they went about their days. The family dynamic was deteriorating fast. Ethan had half-assed the lawn, leaving patches uncut and the edges looking like hell. Dad had attempted to fix the printer, only to break it worse. Mom was getting increasingly snippy about the state of the house. I moved through it all like a ghost, doing the bare minimum. Made my own meals. Cleaned only my own dishes. When the internet went down for the third time that week and Mom called out, "Ryan, the Wi-Fi's acting up again," I just called back, "Try unplugging it." Small satisfactions. Friday night, Dad cornered me again. Look, about your workbench. If you really want to keep it, I can call the guy back. Too little, too late. Don't bother. Ethan's pretty excited about setting up the garage. Maybe you could help him get everything arranged this weekend? You know, make it a brother thing? I almost laughed in his face. A brother thing? After they'd taken my space, tried to sell my property, and treated me like the help for years? I've got plans, I said. What plans? My plans. I brushed past him, headed to my room to pack the last essentials. He followed me up, hovering anxiously. Ryan, what's going on with you lately? Your mother's worried. Of course, not I'm worried, but your mother's worried. Classic dad deflection. Nothing's going on, I said, carefully neutral. Just establishing some boundaries. Boundaries? We're family. And there it was. The magic word that was supposed to excuse everything. Family. The get-out-of-jail-free card they played whenever they wanted something from me. Yes, I agreed. We are family. Which is why it's interesting that when Ethan wants something, it's, we need to support each other. But when I need something, it's, you're an adult. Figure it out. Dad's face flushed. That's not fair. We've supported you plenty. Name one time in the last year you've helped me with anything. One time you've put my needs first. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then tried again. We let you live here, don't we? I pay rent. $850 a month, plus utilities, plus groceries half the time, plus every emergency repair in this house. I'm not living here, Dad. I'm subsidizing all of you. That's ridiculous. You're twisting things. Am I? How much have I spent fixing this place up in the last year? The furnace, the deck, your transmission? Over $8,000. How much has Ethan contributed? Ever? He didn't have an answer for that. And now you're taking my workspace, the one place in this house that's actually mine, and giving it to him, then selling my property without asking. So tell me again how this is a two-way street. Dad's expression cycled through anger, defensiveness, and finally, uncomfortable realization. We didn't think... No, I cut him off. You didn't? I turned back to my closet, started pulling out the last of my clothes, not bothering to hide it now. What are you doing? Dad asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. Packing. For what? I stopped, looked him dead in the eye. I'm moving out. Tomorrow. The shock on his face would have been comical if it wasn't so pathetic. Moving out? Where? Why didn't you tell us? Signed a lease last week, and I'm telling you now. But the basement. We figured that I'd keep bankrolling this household while you guys kept taking? Yeah, that was the plan, wasn't it? He didn't deny it, which told me everything. Ryan, let's talk about this. Your mother will be upset. I'm sure she will be. The ATM is leaving. He left, shell-shocked, and I heard the murmur of urgent voices downstairs. I kept packing, methodical and calm. The storm was coming, and for once, I wasn't going to be the one cleaning up after it. Saturday morning, U-Haul parked conspicuously in the driveway. Me carrying out the last of my boxes while the family watched in various states of distress. Mom was crying, of course. Her go-to manipulation tactic. I don't understand why you're doing this. Why not talk to us first? Like you talked to me before deciding to take my workspace. I loaded another box, not breaking rhythm. That's different. Ethan needed. Ethan always needs. Ethan always gets. I'm just finally taking myself out of the equation. Dad was alternating between anger and bargaining. This is childish, Ryan. Running away because you didn't get your way. Not running away, I corrected, hefting my computer tower into the truck. Moving on. There's a difference. Ethan was sulking on the porch, his future streaming career suddenly in jeopardy, without me there to set up his equipment and troubleshoot his technical problems. What about my desk? He whined. Dad already sold yours. Sounds like a you problem, I replied, echoing his own favorite phrase back at him. Mom followed me back into the house, still sniffling. I just don't understand where this is coming from. We're family. I stopped, set down the box I was carrying, and faced her directly. Let me make it crystal clear then. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a marker from the drawer, and a piece of paper from the printer they still hadn't fixed. In large letters, I wrote, Ryan's contributions. Last 12 months. Rent paid, $10,200. Utilities, approximately $1,800. Groceries, approximately $4,800. Furnace repair, $2,700. Dad's transmission, $1,800. Deck rebuild, $1,100 plus 80 hours labor. Regular home maintenance, $2,400 approximately. Tech support, countless hours. Total, $24,800 plus Ethan's contributions. Zero attitude, priceless. I stuck it to the fridge with a magnet. That's where this is coming from. Mom stared at the list, her tears suddenly drying up. It hasn't been that much. Check my bank statements. I kept records. Dad had wandered in and was reading over her shoulder, his face draining of color. The furnace wasn't that expensive, he protested weakly. $2,700. I have the receipt. You said you'd pay me back when things ease up. That was 11 months ago. They exchanged uncomfortable glances. We've been meaning to, Mom started. Save it, I cut her off. I don't even care about the money anymore. What I care about is that I've been keeping this household afloat for years, and you still treat me like I'm the selfish one when I need something. You still put Ethan first every time, even though he contributes nothing. He's younger, Dad tried. He's still finding his way. He's 19. I was working 2 jobs at 19, paying for my own car, my own phone, my own everything. That's because you were more responsible. Mom's voice trailed off as she realized what she was admitting. Right. I was responsible, so you burdened me with everything. He's irresponsible, so you burden him with nothing. And now, you're genuinely shocked that I'm leaving. I picked up my box again. Ryan, wait, Dad said, his voice no longer angry but genuinely alarmed. Let's figure this out. We can make this right. Too late. I signed a lease, paid the deposit. My name's off the utilities here as of Monday. That landed like a bomb. What do you mean your name's off the utilities? Mom asked. I mean I've been paying the internet, the streaming services, and half the power bill. I called yesterday and had everything transferred or canceled. You've got about 48 hours to figure out new arrangements. Ethan appeared in the doorway, finally catching on that his comfortable life was about to change dramatically. You can't just leave, he protested. Who's going to fix the printer or the Wi-Fi when it goes down? I couldn't help but laugh. That's your first concern, not how will we pay the bills, but who's going to fix my shit for free? I brushed past him, carried the box to the truck. Mom followed me out, now in full panic mode. Ryan, please. We didn't realize how much you were doing. We can work something out. Your father and I will pay you back. With what money? You guys live paycheck to paycheck. We'll figure it out. Please, just don't do this. I closed the U-Haul's rear door, locked it. I've already done it. I'm not asking for the money back. I'm not even asking for an apology, though that would have been nice. I'm just done being the family ATM. But what about Ethan? She asked, and I almost admired her dedication to keeping him at the center of everything. What about him? He's an adult. Let him get a job. He can't find anything in his field. His field? He's a college dropout who plays video games badly on the internet. That's not a field. Harsh, but true. And long overdue. Dad had stormed back inside, but now reappeared with his wallet. He pulled out 5 20s, his standard emergency cash. Here, he said, thrusting it at me. For the furnace. It's a start. I looked at the money, then back at him. Keep it. You're gonna need it. I climbed into the U-Haul. Mom was openly sobbing now. Dad looked shell-shocked, and Ethan was furiously texting someone, probably complaining about his terrible family. I'll call you when I'm settled, I told them, which was more courtesy than they deserved. As I pulled away, I glanced in the side mirror. They stood in the driveway looking lost. For the first time in their adult lives, they were going to have to solve their own problems. The first week in my new place was fucking blissful. No one barging in asking for tech support. No family dinner guilt trips. No expectation that I'd drop everything to chauffeur Ethan around. Just me. My reclaimed workspace set up exactly how I wanted it, and the glorious silence of a space that was 100% mine. I got a text from Mom the day after I left. The internet's not working. Did you really cancel it? I didn't respond. Let them figure it out. 3 days later, a call from Dad. The hot water heater's making a noise. YouTube has lots of DIY videos, I suggested, and hung up. By the end of the week, the texts were coming hourly. The printer still wasn't working. The yard was a jungle. None of them knew how to reset the router properly. The streaming services were gone. Ethan's career was stalled because he couldn't figure out how to set up his equipment. Can you just come over for an hour? Mom pleaded. We'll pay you. My contractor rate is $95 an hour, 2-hour minimum, payment up front, I replied. That shut her up for a while. But the following Tuesday, exactly 10 days after I moved out, the real crisis hit. I got a panicked call from Dad at 8 a.m. The furnace quit again! The house is freezing! It was mid-February, temperatures in the 30s at night. Call the HVAC company, I suggested. They want $200 just to come out, plus parts and labor. Welcome to home ownership. Ryan, please, we don't have that kind of money right now. Of course they didn't. They'd been counting on me to handle all that. What about the emergency fund? I asked, knowing full well there wasn't one. Your mother had to use it for groceries, he admitted. Translation. They'd been living beyond their means for years, using me as the safety net. That sounds serious, I said, trying to keep the satisfaction from my voice. Maybe Ethan can contribute from his streaming income? The silence on the other end was delicious. He doesn't. That's not really... Dad fumbled. Not really bringing in money yet? Shocking. I let him stew for a moment, then sighed dramatically. Text me the exact error code on the furnace display. I'll see if it's something simple. It wasn't, of course. The igniter had failed, a $95 part plus labor. But I knew it wasn't something they could fix themselves without risking bigger problems. You've got two options, I told Dad after researching it. Pay the HVAC company or replace the igniter yourself and risk damaging the control board, which would be another $600 repair. Can't you just come look at it? He almost begged. I'm in the middle of a client project with a deadline, I said, which was true. But tell you what, if you and Ethan want to come by tonight, I'll walk you through ordering the part and show you some YouTube tutorials on how to replace it. There was a long pause. Dad, considering whether his pride was worth suffering in a cold house. What time? He finally asked. 7 p.m. and Dad, bring Ethan. He should learn this stuff if he's going to keep living there. That night, they both showed up at my door, looking uncomfortable. It was the first time they'd seen my new place. It's nice, Dad offered, looking around at my perfectly arranged studio. My desk, not the one they'd sold, but a new one I'd found on Craigslist and refinished, took pride of place by the window. Thanks. I didn't invite them to sit. Let's talk furnace. I pulled up the manual for their unit, showed them exactly which part they needed, where to order it, and how to install it. I don't think I can do this, Dad admitted, staring at the diagram. I definitely can't, Ethan added, not even bothering to hide his lack of interest. Then you'll need to call the HVAC company. Ryan, please. Dad tried one more time. We really don't have the money right now. Couldn't you just... No, I said firmly. I couldn't. But if you say family, I'm going to close this door right now, I warned him. Family goes both ways. And for years, it's only gone one way with us. He swallowed whatever he was going to say. Look, I softened slightly. I'll make you a deal. I'll come fix the furnace this one time. But in exchange, we're going to have a serious family meeting about finances and responsibilities. All cards on the table. And Ethan starts contributing. Real contributions, not promises. Dad looked relieved. Deal. Absolutely. Ethan frowned. What do you mean, contributing? I mean you get a job. A real one with a paycheck. You pay rent. You do chores without being nagged. You learn how to fix basic household stuff, so it doesn't all fall on Dad now that I'm gone. But my streaming is a hobby, not a career. Not yet, anyway. You can stream on your days off, just like any other hobby. He looked like he wanted to argue, but Dad shot him a warning look. Fine, Ethan muttered. The next day, I went over and fixed their furnace. It took about an hour, start to finish. Then I called a family meeting at the kitchen table. I laid it all out, their actual expenses versus income, the reality of what it would cost to replace all the services I'd been providing for free, and a proposed budget going forward, including $250 per month rent from Ethan. That's not fair, he protested. I don't have any money. That's why you'll get a job, I explained, like I was talking to a toddler. McDonald's is hiring. So is Target. So is every warehouse in the area. Those aren't real jobs. They pay real money. Money you need. Mom looked teary again. Ryan, he's not like you. He struggles with. With what, exactly? He's not disabled. He's not sick. He's a perfectly healthy 19-year-old who's been allowed to coast because it was easier than holding him accountable. Dad surprisingly backed me up. Your brother's right, Ethan. Things need to change around here. The look of betrayal on Ethan's face was priceless. He wasn't used to Dad taking anyone's side but his. This is bullshit, he declared, standing up. I'm not getting some lame-ass job just because Ryan decided to be a dick about money. Yes, you are, Dad said, his voice firmer than I'd heard it in years. Or you're finding somewhere else to live. Holy shit. Actual parenting happening before my eyes. Ethan stormed out, slamming his door like the adult he definitely wasn't. He'll calm down, Mom said, but she sounded uncertain. And if he doesn't? I asked. Dad sighed heavily. Then he really will have to figure something else out. We can't keep going like this. I hadn't expected that. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally getting it. What about you? I asked. I meant what I said about all cards on the table. I've been subsidizing this household for years. That stops now. They looked at each other, then nodded slowly. We'll figure it out, Dad said. Get on a budget. Maybe pick up some extra shifts. Good, I said, standing up. I'll check in next week to see how it's going. As I headed for the door, Mom called after me. Will you come for dinner sometimes? Not to fix things, just to visit. I paused. Maybe, once you guys get your house in order. Literally and figuratively. 3 weeks later, Ethan got a job at a warehouse. Entry level, but decent pay. The look on his face the first time he had to hand over rent money to Dad was something I'll treasure forever. Dad dug out his old tools and started learning basic home repairs from YouTube. Mom set up a real budget and stuck to it. They even started paying me back for the furnace. Small amounts, but regular. And me? I'm killing it at my new place. Business is booming now that I don't have family drama eating up my mental bandwidth. I've got boundaries. I've got peace. I've got that satisfying feeling that comes from watching people finally face reality. I still go over for dinner occasionally, but now when something breaks, I don't automatically jump up to fix it. I watch as Dad and Ethan figure it out together. It took burning it all down to build something better. And I don't regret it for a second. Final update. It's been half a year since I moved out and forced my family to face reality, and the transformation is actually kind of shocking. Last weekend I stopped by for the monthly family dinner we've established. On my terms, where I'm a guest, not the household ATMR repairman. The lawn was actually mowed. The kitchen sink wasn't piled with dishes. And most surprisingly, Ethan wasn't glued to his gaming setup. Turns out, the golden child learned some harsh lessons these past months. His streaming career hit a wall fast once he had to balance it with his warehouse job. No more 12-hour gaming marathons when you've got an 8-hour shift moving boxes. He bitched about it constantly at first, according to Mom, but something unexpected happened. He got promoted to shift lead last week, Dad told me proudly over pot roast. Youngest one they've ever had in that position. Ethan actually looked embarrassed by the praise, which was new. It's not a big deal. Just means more responsibility for barely more money. Welcome to adulthood, I said, but without the bite I would have had before. The real shocker came after dinner, when the dishwasher made a weird grinding noise mid-cycle. Shit, Dad muttered. Then, instead of looking at me expectantly, he turned to Ethan. Can you take a look at that tomorrow? Probably just something caught in the filter. And Ethan just nodded, like this was normal, like he'd been handling household maintenance all along. He's gotten pretty good with basic repairs, Mom explained, seeing my surprised face. After you left and the toilet broke for the 3rd time, he finally took initiative. YouTube tutorials, Ethan shrugged. Same ones you used to watch. I almost fell out of my chair. Later, Dad walked me out to my car and awkwardly handed me an envelope. Inside was $500 cash. It's not everything we owe you, he said quickly. But we've been putting aside a little each month. Figured we'd start making real payments, not just token ones. I was genuinely speechless. For years, money had only flowed one direction in this family, from my pocket to theirs. This reversal felt alien. Thanks, I finally managed. I appreciate it. We should have done better by you, Dad said, staring at his shoes. I didn't realize how much we were taking advantage until you weren't there to take advantage of anymore. It's not an excuse, but I'm sorry. Again, words I never thought I'd hear. Ethan's different too, he continued. Having real responsibilities, earning his own money. It's been good for him. Made him grow up. Better late than never, I said, but without rancor. Yeah. Dad hesitated, then asked, "You doing okay?" "Place working out?" "Better than okay," I told him truthfully. "Business has doubled since I moved. Turns out not having my resources drained constantly lets me focus on actually building something." He winced slightly but nodded. "You deserved better from us." As I drove home, I realized something had shifted fundamentally. My family hadn't just adjusted to my absence, they'd actually grown from it. Ethan was developing into a functioning adult. My parents were taking responsibility for their finances. And most importantly, they were finally acknowledging what they'd done. Obligatory disclaimer. Yeah, I know some of you will say I should have cut contact completely. Trust me, I considered it. But despite everything, they're still my family. I'm not saying everyone should reconcile. Some families are truly toxic beyond repair. But in my case, once they showed actual change and remorse, I decided a controlled relationship was worth trying. Your mileage may vary. The following week, I got a text from Ethan that nearly made me crash my car. "Hey, got a bonus at work. Wanted to pay you back for the bike Dad sold." It was a dick move. "Let me know your Venmo." I'm not making this shit up. I literally had to pull over because I thought I was hallucinating, or someone had stolen his phone. I actually checked if I was hallucinating. The golden child acknowledging a wrong and offering to make it right, without being forced. I sent him my Venmo info, half expecting nothing to come of it. 10 minutes later, $300 hit my account with the note, "For the bike. Sorry it took so long." It wasn't just about the money. It was the recognition, the acknowledgement that what had happened wasn't okay. That weekend, something even weirder happened. Ethan called, not texted, actually called, and asked if I'd help him set up a basic budget spreadsheet. The warehouse is offering a 401k match, and I don't know shit about investing, but I figure I should start. I invited him over, showed him how to track expenses, explained compound interest, and set him up with some basic financial literacy resources. The entire time he paid attention, asked questions, took notes, like an actual adult human. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. "Your place is really nice. Way better than that moldy basement they were gonna stick you in." "Thanks. I like it." He shifted awkwardly. "I was a real asshole about the garage, and a lot of other stuff. I didn't realize how much you were carrying for everyone." I hadn't expected an apology from him. Not ever, really. "Water under the bridge," I said, meaning it. "Mom and Dad really miss having you around," he added. "Not just for fixing stuff. They actually miss you." "I miss certain things too," I admitted. "Not the exploitation part, but the good parts of family." He nodded, understanding. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Shit needed to change." Now, 6 months out, I can honestly say my scorched earth exit was the best thing I could have done. Not just for me, but for all of us. Mom and Dad are on a budget for the first time in their adult lives. They've started building an emergency fund. Dad's become surprisingly handy around the house. Ethan's not just working, he's thriving with actual structure and expectations. He still games and streams occasionally, but as a hobby, not a delusional career plan. He's talking about taking classes at community college again, but with a realistic plan this time. And me? I've started dating again, joined a rock climbing gym, expanded my client base. All the energy that used to go into propping up my family now goes into building my own life. I still maintain firm boundaries. I don't lend money. I don't drop everything to fix their problems. But the dynamic has completely transformed. We're slowly rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. It's still a work in progress, but for the first time, it feels like progress is actually happening. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people is to stop enabling their worst behaviors. It's messy and painful, but if they're capable of growth at all, they might just thank you for it eventually. My family did, and I never saw that plot twist coming. Edit. For those asking if I'll ever fully trust them again, probably not 100%, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets, as they say. They're earning those drops back slowly,